This was the first time I had witnessed such shocking family disputes. I thought family was a place full of love and warmth, but I didn't expect it to be filled with so much hatred and violence. Ning Myun, the one who has been abused by my family. Now that I have been reborn, I have decided to strike back at them mercilessly. The funny thing is, they wanted to keep me. Part 2. Chapter 60. Ning Myun, where are you? Shin Yun leaned weakly on the driver's seat. The car was so quiet that the only sounds were her rapid breathing and the regret churning in her chest. She felt as if she were in a dream. But the passing scenery outside the car and the tears in her eyes told her that all this was reality. Ning Myun really left, not only disappearing from her sight, but also completely leaving her life. The fragments of memories pierced her heart like a blade. The memory of the wedding day suddenly came back to her, and she couldn't help but think of the time when she left the wedding to meet her old friend Minghui. Ning Myun had a hint of disappointment in her eyes at that time, but she turned a blind eye to it and only thought about fighting against the marriage arranged by fate. She didn't realize that everything the man had done for her in the past 8 years had already gone beyond any common sense. He always silently met her needs, and he even remembered her most subtle preferences clearly. A garden of blue roses, this precious Maserati sports car. But she never gave him even a hint of warmth in response. Shin Yunyin thought bitterly. Her heart gradually filled with self-blame and regret. The air in the car seemed to be stagnant. Shin Yunyin's hands were shaking as she gripped the steering wheel tightly. The scene in the Civil Affairs Bureau just now kept replaying in my mind. At that time, she just wanted to scare Ning Myun into compromising and apologizing to her. But she never expected that Ning Myun would sign the divorce agreement without hesitation. The eyes that once looked at her tenderly were now filled with indifference and determination. Shun Winshan's words were still echoing in his ears. You must find Ning Myun and remarry, otherwise the company will be finished. However, at this moment, Shin Yunyin no longer had the company or family pressure in her heart, only an indescribable emptiness and helplessness. She suddenly realized that she didn't want to remarry just for the company, but because she was afraid of actually losing this man. Her thoughts were interrupted by the noise outside the car. A horn sounded and Shun Yunyan was suddenly awakened, realizing that she had driven some distance unconsciously. She gripped the steering wheel tightly and forced herself to calm down, but the tears still flowed out. Suddenly, her phone lit up. Her heartbeat quickened, and she quickly picked up the phone. But what she saw was an urging message from her father instead of the name she was expecting. Disappointment overwhelmed her like a tide. She frantically dialed Ning Myun's number, but every time it was the same mechanical female voice. The number you dialed is powered off. Ning Myun is really gone, and he will never come back. Sister, did he really block you? Shin Xuani's voice came from the car Bluetooth, with an undisguised gloating and confusion in his tone. Shin Yunyin did not answer, but silently sped up the car. Shin Yunyin suddenly remembered that this was the wedding gift Ning Myun gave her. Ning Myun has always been very frugal, and even when he goes out he drives the Ning family's old Audi A6. But he spent millions to buy this sports car for himself. He knew that he liked Maserati, so he went to the Italian factory to order a car several months in advance. He knew that he liked blue roses, so he planted roses in the garden villa several months in advance, just waiting for the wedding day so that he could appreciate the beautiful scenery for the first time. During these 8 years, he tried every possible way to meet all his needs. But just because I hated the marriage arrangement that my grandfather had made on his own, I had always felt resentful about it and had never been nice to him. But he didn't do anything wrong. Shin Yunyin suddenly began to doubt whether she had made a mistake by leaving the wedding to see Minghui off. But Minghui will never come back. Isn't it right to say goodbye to old friends? Shin Yunyin suddenly remembered Ning Myun's drastic changes in the past 2 days. He also recalled the undisguised disgust in Ning Myun's eyes just now. A heart-wrenching pain came from the bottom of her heart, making Shun Yunyin breathless. Why? Why does my heart hurt so much? 2 lines of tears flowed unconsciously from the corners of my eyes. Shin Yunyin looked at the flowing scenery outside the window with tearful eyes and whispered to herself, Ning Myun, can you please come back? Ning Myun, where are you? However, all she got in response was the empty carriage and the silent street. Tapter altmış bir Ning Myun, Ning Yuyan, şut stinkimot. Ning Myun stood in the hall of Royun culture, facing the huge crystal angel statue in front of him with mixed feelings. For years ago, Zhu Yunru was still an unknown entrepreneur, but now the market value of her company has soared to 15 billion. And what about himself? Ning Muyun looked at the phone in his hand and sighed deeply. The crisis of Wen's group was approaching, and the gap of 500 million yuan in funds was like a mountain pressing down on him, making it hard for him to breathe. He didn't want to ask Zhu Yunru for help, but apart from her, he had no other choice. Just as he was about to walk to the front desk, a sweet call came from a distance. Mu Yun. He was stunned for a moment, turned his head, and saw Zhu Yunru running towards him with a smile on her face, wearing a pair of white high heels. Her golden hair gleamed slightly under the light, and she was followed by a group of assistants, making her look particularly dazzling. Just as Ning Muyun was about to speak, Zhu Yunru had already run up to him and threw herself into his arms without hesitation. Muyun, long time no see. How come you have time to come to see me? Her voice was as gentle as the spring breeze. The elegant fragrance on her body made Ning Muyun a little at a loss for a moment. Yun Ro, I. He was about to speak, but was interrupted. Muyun, don't be so polite. Zhu Yunru still hugged him tightly, with no intention of letting go. People passing by in the hall cast curious glances at her, but Zhu Yunru seemed not to care. At this moment, a harsh voice broke the warmth. Little beast, why are you here? Ning Muyun's face suddenly became gloomy. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw a familiar figure slowly approaching. Ning Yuyin. Ning Muyun's eyes turned cold, and his tone was full of disgust and warning. Ning Yuyin, shut your stinky mouth. Ning Yuyin sneered as she approached, her eyes full of mockery. What, Ning Muyun? You're coming to rely on a woman right after your divorce? You're such a loser. When Zhu Yunru heard this, she frowned and stood beside Ning Muyun to protect him. She looked at Ning Yuyin coldly. Miss, please respect Muyun. He is not someone you can insult at will. Ning Yuyin snorted nonchalantly, with a hint of pride in her eyes. Why? Do you really think he's a big shot? Without the Shen family, he's nothing. Ning Muyun clenched his fists, a cold light flashed in his eyes. Whether I leave the Shen family or not has nothing to do with you. You'd better take care of yourself. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Zhu Yunru felt Ning Muyun's inner anger. She patted his shoulder gently, signaling him to calm down. She turned to look at Ning Yuyin, her tone becoming cold and firm. Ning Yuyin, if you continue to make trouble like this, I can ask the security guard to ask you to leave. Ning Yuyin sneered. Who do you think you are? With your ability, you dare to threaten me? Let's give it a try. Zhu Yunru's eyes turned cold, and she signaled to the assistant next to her. The assistant immediately called the security guard. Seeing that the situation was about to escalate, Ning Muyun looked at Ning Yuyin coldly, and suddenly revealed a sarcastic smile. Do you really think that the Shun family can still suppress me? I'm telling you, sooner or later, I will make you pay for the insult you inflicted today. Ning Yuyin's expression changed, but she quickly returned to her previous arrogance. We're waiting to see how you turn things around, Ning Muyun. After saying that, she turned away with disdain. Ning Muyun stood there, looking at her back, with countless complicated emotions surging in his heart. His clenched fists gradually loosened. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Muyun, don't care about what those people say. Zhu Yunru looked at him gently and comforted him softly. Thank you, Yunru. Ning Muyun looked at her deeply, with guilt and gratitude intertwined in his heart. Let's go to my office and talk. Zhu Yunru smiled and took Ning Muyun to the elevator. Ning Muyun knew that he had to make some difficult decisions next, whether it was facing the betrayal of his family or redefining his relationship with Zhu Yunru. Chapter 62, Ning Yuyin. Do you know how much trouble you have caused? Ning Yuyin just received a call from her agent Amy and hurried to the headquarters of Royan Culture. As soon as you enter the hall, the crystal angel statue, standing in the center, sparkles under the lights. This is the design work of the company's chairman Zhu Yunru. Every time she saw this statue, Ning Yuyin sincerely admired the talent of the young chairman. Royan Culture is different from other cultural companies. It has the characteristics of high salaries, creative freedom, and zero tolerance for unspoken rules, which has attracted countless artists to join. As a member of the company, Ning Yuyin has always been proud of her signing. Today, she was not in a relaxed mood. Ning Muyun's scandal had spread everywhere, and she was also affected by it. However, Ning Yuyin did not care much about the public opinion. She felt that she could handle it easily. After all, she had already figured out how to portray herself as someone who would sacrifice her relatives for the sake of justice, and she might even let the public opinion storm bring her more goodwill. When the elevator reached the 12th floor, Sister Amy rushed over, her face full of anxiety. Yin, you're in big trouble this time? Ning Yin looked relaxed and said nonchalantly, Sister Amy, it's not that serious, right? It's just a small problem. Sister Amy's face was solemn. The crew has suspended filming. The company's top management is very angry. Ning Yin's heart trembled slightly. A senior executive of the company? Her original ease suddenly dissipated a little, but she remained calm on the surface. This matter will be over soon, and the reporters will soon divert their attention. Sister Amy sighed and said helplessly, I hope so. She pointed to the meeting room next to her, but you still have to go in and apologize. Everyone is very dissatisfied with what you did this time. Ning Yin felt a little unhappy, but still nodded in agreement. She took a deep breath and cursed Ning Miyun in her heart. It's all that rubbish. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't need to apologize now. As she entered the conference room, harsh whispers were heard immediately. Ning Yin felt the complicated looks from the director and actors, which were filled with disappointment, anger, and ridicule. She gritted her teeth and bowed with a smile. Everyone, I'm sorry for causing trouble to you because of my brother's matter. The whispering became louder and the situation became awkward. The director coughed a few times and signaled everyone to be quiet. He glanced at everyone and said calmly, Please be tolerant. Miss Ning is also a victim. Ning Yin felt extremely wronged. She had never been so embarrassed before. Her eyes turned red and she choked up as she said, I'm really sorry. I promise I won't do it again. Just as the atmosphere was about to ease, the door of the conference room was suddenly pushed open. A middle-aged woman in a business suit and high heels walked in. Her stern face instantly made the conference room quiet. She is the company's public relations director, Feng Yin. When everyone present saw her come in, they immediately stood up and saluted. Hello, director. Feng Yin has a strong aura, and any artist is in awe of her because she has the power to decide the direction of a person's career. Once someone is banned by Feng Yin, no one in the entire industry will dare to work with her again. Feng Yin glanced coldly at the entire room, her gaze finally fixed on Ning Yin. She slammed the table without any hesitation and shouted angrily. Ning Yin, do you know how much trouble you have caused to the company? Ning Yin's heartbeat accelerated instantly. Chapter 63 Ning Yin. It's over. Now I really have to commit perjury. Everyone's eyes shot at Ning Yin like sharp swords. Her heartbeat accelerated, but she remained calm on the surface. Ning Yin couldn't prove his innocence, which gave her some confidence. She straightened her back, faced Feng Yin, and said respectfully, Director, I'm sorry. I know this interview has caused trouble for the company, but I'm telling the truth. Feng Yin looked at her coldly, her tone extremely serious. The truth? You don't have any official bail certificate, nor do you have any hospital test reports. In the absence of solid evidence, every word you say is just one-sided. People can naturally accuse you of spreading rumors. Ning Yin's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly defended herself. Director, what I said is really the truth. Feng Yan's eyes became colder. The company can help you calm down this storm, but you must tell the truth. By then, hundreds of millions of yuan of investment will be lost, the company's market value will plummet, and you will have to pay a huge penalty. Ning Yin's forehead was covered with cold sweat. Feng Yan's questioning made her feel invisible pressure. The atmosphere in the conference room became more and more tense, and everyone was waiting for her response. Let me ask you again. Feng Yin stared at her, her voice unquestionable. Was what you said in front of the reporters yesterday true? Ning Yin felt that all eyes were focused on her like sharp arrows, and her breathing became more rapid. What flashed through my mind was the miserable situation of a star who was once banned by Royan culture. That star also lied during the public opinion storm and was ruthlessly banned by the company. Not only did he pay a huge amount of liquidated damages, he was also completely kicked out of the entertainment industry. Thinking back to these, Ning Yin was terrified. But when she thought that Ning Yin could not refute, a trace of luck in her heart emerged again. She gritted her teeth and decided to insist. Director, I promise that what I said is true. Feng Yin narrowed her eyes slightly and said coldly, Okay, since what you said is true, then take out the bail certificate of your brother's girlfriend Nu Chang and the test report that he has sexually transmitted diseases. As long as you produce these two documents, the company will immediately help you calm down the public opinion. Ning Yin's heart instantly rose to her throat. How could she produce such a document? It didn't exist at all. She suddenly fell into a huge panic, but she didn't dare to let Feng Yin notice. Seeing her hesitation, Feng Yan's expression became even more severe. What are you hesitating about? Did you just say a lie? Ning Yin panicked and immediately shook her head to deny it. No, no, no. Director, I was just thinking about where the document is. I will get it as soon as possible. Feng Yin stared at her for a few seconds, her tone still stern. Then I'll wait for you to bring the documents. During this period, don't talk nonsense outside, understand? Yes, I understand, Director. Ning Yin nodded quickly in agreement. The moment she left the conference room, Ning Yin's hands and feet were cold. She knew that she had fallen into a bottomless abyss. She actually agreed to take a non-existent file. Now she was really at her wit's end. Chapter 64, Zhu Yunru. You are Ning Yin? Ning Yin felt her palms sweating and her heart beating like a drum. Zhu Yunru's light blue eyes were like sharp blades, staring straight at her, as if she saw through everything. She suppressed her inner tension, nodded, and responded with a smile. Yes, Chairman, I am Ning Yin. Zhu Yunru's eyes were still as calm as water. She did not speak immediately, but continued to look at Ning Yin. The air in the conference room seemed to freeze, and everyone was holding their breath waiting for the next words. I heard about your recent situation. Zhu Yunru's voice was clear, but it carried unquestionable majesty. Your remarks in front of the reporters have caused a huge public opinion storm, and the company is in trouble because of you. Ning Yin's heart trembled. Although she had long known that her actions this time might have consequences, she never expected that the chairman would come and inquire about the matter in person. She quickly lowered her head and explained anxiously, Chairman, I really didn't mean it. I just told the truth. The truth. There was no fluctuation in Zhu Yunru's voice, but those two simple words made Ning Yin's heart tighten. Feng Yin stood aside, looking serious. The chairman has learned all the details of this matter, so we want to confirm, Miss Ning, is what you said completely true? Ning Yin's throat was dry. She had originally thought that she could rely on the fabricated evidence to escape this disaster. But now, all her lies seemed to be pushed to the edge by Zhu Yunru's eyes, and were in danger. She took a deep breath and said with a stiff upper lip, Yes, I promise that what I said is true. Zhu Yunru's eyes became sharper. She looked at Ning Yin quietly for a while, then turned around and looked at Feng Yin. If Miss Ning cannot provide conclusive evidence, then the company will not bear any consequences for her remarks. Feng Yin nodded immediately. Yes, Chairman. Ning Yin's heart suddenly sank. She knew what Zhu Yunru meant by this. If she could not produce the so-called bail certificate and STD test report, she would lose all the support of the company and even face the risk of being banned. Ning Yin, you still have time. Zhu Yunru's voice was calm, but full of power. But remember, time will not wait for you. Every word Zhu Yunru said hit Ning Yin's heart like a heavy hammer. She forced a smile and nodded in agreement, but her heart was already in a mess. She knew that she had fallen into a desperate situation. There was no way out. Chapter 65, Ning Yin. Why is the chairman hugging the little beast? Ning Yin felt a tingling sensation on her back. All eyes in the conference room were focused on her again, especially Zhu Yunru's gentle yet sharp gaze, which made her dare not look directly at him. She tried to force out a smile and replied stiffly, Yes, yes. Chairman, I am Ning Yin. Zhu Yunru still maintained her sweet smile, her tone relaxed but with a hint of sharpness. Ning Muyun, he is your brother, right? Ning Yin cursed Ning Muyun in her heart, thinking that he had damaged her image in front of the chairman. She suppressed her displeasure and tried to be humble. Yes, Chairman, that person with low moral character and corrupt ethics is indeed my brother. He has brought so much trouble to the company. I apologize to you on his behalf. After saying this, she bowed quickly, her face full of respect. However, Zhu Yunru did not respond, but her smile became even brighter. Ning Yin began to feel uneasy. She maintained her bowing posture and dared not move. The atmosphere around her gradually became weird. Jiang Yunfei glimpsed Zhu Yunru's brilliant smile and suddenly felt something was wrong. She felt a chill on her back. When Feng Yin and the company's top executives saw Zhu Yunru's expression, their faces changed drastically and cold sweat began to appear on their foreheads. People who are familiar with Zhu Yunru understand that the brighter her smile is, the angrier she is. The conference room fell into a strange silence, and the air seemed to freeze. Just when the atmosphere was so oppressive that it was suffocating, a cell phone rang, breaking the silence. Everyone looked at Zhu Yunru. She took out her cell phone from her bag. When she saw the incoming call, her expression suddenly changed. Her previous bright smile turned into joy from the bottom of her heart, as if ice and snow had melted. Seeing Zhu Yunru's mood suddenly improve, the general manager and the president standing behind her secretly breathed a sigh of relief. They were curious about what news had made her turn from anger to joy in an instant. I have to pick someone up. Do you want to go with me? Zhu Yunru closed her phone, and the smile on her face became even sweeter. These words shocked everyone in the conference room. What kind of person could make Zhu Yunru, the chairman of Royun culture, personally go to greet him? Feng Yin couldn't help but ask, "Chairman, who are you going to meet?" Zhu Yunru smiled even more and said softly, "He is my good friend and the second largest shareholder of Royun culture." The second largest shareholder? Everyone looked at each other in shock. This mysterious second largest shareholder had never shown up in the company, but he was coming in person today? The general manager and the president were even more surprised. They were full of curiosity about this mysterious shareholder, and the identity of this shareholder began to quickly gain popularity in everyone's mind. Ning Yuyin was surprised and excited when she heard that it was the second largest shareholder of the company. She thought the chairman was going to meet a certain customer, but she didn't expect it to be a shareholder of the company. She quickly tidied her appearance, hoping to take the opportunity to leave a good impression on the shareholder. "Everyone come with me," Zhu Yunru said softly. Naturally, everyone had no objection and followed her to the hall. Along the way, Zhu Yunru had a sweet smile on her face, and the atmosphere became relaxed. But Ning Yuyin's heart was full of curiosity and expectation. She really wanted to know what kind of person this mysterious shareholder was. However, when they arrived at the lobby, Ning Yuyin suddenly saw a familiar figure appear at the entrance. Ning Muyun. The moment she saw him walk into the company, Ning Yuyin's anger instantly erupted. How could this useless brother appear here? How dare he come to cause trouble? Just as she was about to sneak up to stop Ning Muyun, a jaw-dropping scene happened. Zhu Yunru actually smiled and threw herself directly into Ning Muyun's arms. Ning Yuyin's mind went blank in an instant, and she was completely stunned. What on earth is going on? Chapter 66. Ning Yuyin felt like she was about to suffocate. Ning Yuyan ratit huyunro hu Ning Muyun afitonateli. Her mind went blank for a moment, and her heart was filled with confusion and anger. She couldn't believe her eyes. How could Ning Muyun, a good-for-nothing brother, have such a close relationship with her idol, the chairman? The only explanation was that Ning Muyun had used some despicable means to deceive Zhu Yunru. Thinking of this, Ning Yuyin couldn't hold back any longer, and she was so angry that she shouted, "Little beast, why are you here?" Everyone was stunned when these words came out. Zhu Yunru had just stood up from Ning Muyun's arms, and the female president and general manager behind her widened their eyes. Who is Zhu Yunru? She has a distinguished family background, outstanding looks, and is the helmsman of Royun culture, a cultural giant with a market value of over 10 billion. Many young talents tried to win her favor, but were rejected by her cold smile. However, at this moment, this unattainable chairman actually threw herself into the arms of a young man with a smile on her face. What surprised them even more was that this man turned out to be Ning Muyun, the second largest shareholder of Royun culture, whom they had never met before. But before they could recover from the shock, Ning Yuyin's shrill scolding was heard again, instantly breaking the surprise. Everyone's eyes instantly turned to Ning Yuyin, and the faces of the female president and the general manager suddenly turned gloomy. Ning Muyun wanted to say something, but Ning Yuyin's vicious curse made his face darken and anger rose in his heart. He coldly responded, "Ning Yuyin, shut your stinky mouth." Ning Yuyin wanted to curse back, but her agent Amy suddenly covered her mouth. She wanted to break free, but when she followed Amy's gaze, she froze immediately. Feng Yin, the general manager, and the female president were staring at her coldly. The eyes of the other crew members were also filled with shock and disbelief. She felt a chill in her heart and didn't dare to speak for the time being. She could only glare at Ning Muyun fiercely. Seeing Ning Yuyin finally shut up, Feng Yin quickly walked up to Ning Muyun and apologized with a big smile on her face. "Sir, I'm really sorry. Xiao Ning was so rude to you just now. We sincerely apologize to you." The general manager also quickly agreed. Yes, sir. Please forgive me. We will definitely let her apologize to you." Seeing this, Zhu Yunru smiled sweetly and said calmly, "Ms. Ning, I think there may be some misunderstanding here." Hearing the chairman's excuse for her, Ning Yuyin felt warm in her heart. She became more certain of her judgment, believing that Ning Muyin must have used some means to deceive Zhu Yunru. She could no longer hold back, so she took a step forward and said directly to Zhu Yunru, "Chairman, please don't be fooled by him. He is a morally corrupt villain and is absolutely not worthy of your trust." As soon as she said this, the air in the conference room froze instantly. Feng Yan's face turned pale, and she almost had a fit of anger on the spot. She quickly walked to Ning Yuyin, lowered her voice, and said angrily, "Ning Yuyin, shut up. Do you know what you are saying?" Ning Yuyin saw the unfriendly looks from Feng Yin and the senior executives. Although she was afraid, she was still unwilling to accept it. She wanted to explain herself, but Feng Yin shouted at her, "Apologize. Director, this little bastard." "Shut up." Feng Yan's voice was low but intimidating. "I said apologize." Ning Yuyin felt that Feng Yan's anger was on the verge of exploding. She knew that if she didn't give in, she might really be kicked out of Royun culture. However, asking her to bow her head and apologize to Ning Muyun, her brother who had been beaten and scolded by her since childhood, was even more painful than killing her. The urging voices of the crew members and Agent Amy came from all around, and the pressure became stronger and stronger. Everyone's eyes were focused on her, and Ning Yuyin felt suffocated by the pressure. At this moment, she realized that if she didn't apologize, her future might really be ruined. Chapter 67, Zhu Yunru. Muyun, what do you want to talk to me about? Under the strong pressure from everyone, Ning Yuyin finally couldn't bear it anymore and could only lower her head in humiliation and said in a voice so low that it was almost inaudible, "I'm sorry." Feng Yin shouted, "Louder!" This frightened Ning Yuyin so much that her whole body trembled, and she barely raised her voice a little. "I'm sorry." She lowered her head, tears of humiliation falling silently. Her inner resentment deepened, and being forced to bow her head and apologize made her feel extremely humiliated, especially Ning Miyun's cold attitude of ignoring her, which hurt her heart even more. Zhu Yunru chuckled and said, "Okay, Miss Ning has apologized, so let's leave it at that. Miss Ning has been troubled by public opinion recently, and we need to help her calm down this storm as soon as possible." She looked at Feng Yin and ordered, "Prepare a public relations plan to ensure that the film can resume production smoothly." Feng Yin agreed respectfully. "Yes, Chairman. As long as Miss Ning provides relevant evidence, we will immediately start public relations." As soon as she finished speaking, she prepared to leave with the crew. Ning Yuyin was grateful and anxious when she heard this. She couldn't wait to forge the two pieces of evidence so that she could get out of the predicament as soon as possible and expose Ning Muyun's true face. However, at this moment, Jiang Yunfei suddenly walked out of the crowd, smiling, and said softly, "Brother Muyun." Hearing this name, Ning Muyun's face instantly turned cold. In his mind, he recalled the scene in the past where he was punished and scolded for what Jiang Yunfei had done. The painful memory came back to him again. He replied bluntly, "No, I've never seen her." Jiang Yunfei's face froze instantly, and her heart felt like it was hit by a heavy hammer. She stared at Ning Muyun in a daze, as if she couldn't believe that he would treat her so coldly. The brother who once cared for her in every way now refused to admit that he even knew her. Zhu Yunru stood aside, watching the scene with a smile, as if she found Jiang Yunfei's embarrassment a little interesting. Her smile became brighter and brighter, and the female president and general manager behind her clearly realized that the chairman was angry again. The two cast a warning look at Jiang Yunfei, and Feng Yin also hurried forward and pulled Jiang Yunfei away. The atmosphere in the hall gradually calmed down, leaving only Zhu Yunru and Ning Muyun standing together. The female president and the general manager also tactfully withdrew, leaving the two of them alone. Zhu Yunru had a gentle smile on her face, but there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Muyun, what's wrong? You don't look very happy." Ning Muyun smiled bitterly, and his previous emotions slowly calmed down. "Yunro, long time no see." Zhu Yunru chuckled and pretended to blame. "You haven't contacted me for so long. I thought you had forgotten me." Ning Muyun scratched his head awkwardly. "There have been too many things going on recently." Zhu Yunru's eyes darkened, but her tone remained gentle. "I heard that you got married 2 days ago. Congratulations." Ning Muyun was about to explain when the divorce certificate in her arms accidentally fell out. Zhu Yunru leaned over to pick it up. When she saw the words on the certificate, her eyes instantly brightened and the smile on her lips became even brighter. "Divorce certificate. Muyun, are you divorced?" Ning Muyun said calmly. I just went through the procedures with Shun Yunyan. Hearing this, Zhu Yunru's face showed an excitement that could not be concealed, and her smile was more dazzling than the dazzling crystal angel statue in the hall. Mu Yun, what is the matter with you coming to see me today? Chapter 68. Third Sister. We are ready to sever ties with that little beast. Ning Muyin looked at Zhu Yunru in front of him and couldn't help but sigh at her changes. When she was in college, she was already a campus beauty. A few years after graduation, she had shed her youthfulness and her temperament became more outstanding. The calmness and charm after taking charge of the company made her seem even more inviolable. Faced with her like this, Ning Muyin felt the pressure doubled. Yinro, I came here today because I want to talk to you about something. Ning Muyin just opened his mouth. Zhu Yunru blushed and immediately grabbed his hand and said, Mu Yun, let's talk in my office. She held his hand unexpectedly. Ning Muyin took a breath and frowned slightly. Zhu Yunru then noticed the bandage on Ning Muyun's hand, and her eyes instantly turned red. Muyun, what's wrong with your hand? Ning Muyun smiled faintly, trying to downplay it. It's okay. I accidentally got burned yesterday. It's no big deal. Zhu Yunru was worried. Her eyes were filled with heartache, and she touched his bandage carefully. Does it still hurt? Ning Muyun smiled and said, It doesn't hurt anymore. Zhu Yunru glared at him in reproach, gently took his arm, and said softly, Come on, I'll take you to my office. Ning Muyun felt warm at heart as he saw her attentiveness and care. He secretly vowed to protect Zhu Yunru in this life and never let her experience the pain that she shouldn't have to endure. In the design competition in the previous life, Zhu Yunru was wronged because of the conspiracy of Ning Shuxian, the second child of the Ning family. He was determined not to let history repeat itself. He wanted to help her regain the glory that should belong to her, and also do his best to push Royun culture to a higher peak. The two walked into the chairman's special elevator and headed straight to the top floor office. In the distance, Jiang Yunfei watched them leave, feeling a pain in her heart as if being stabbed by a needle. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she murmured to herself, Brother Mu Yun, why do you pretend not to know me? Are you still blaming me? At the same time, Ning Yuyin was furious after being scolded by Feng Yin. In order to calm down the public opinion storm as soon as possible, she decided to find Ning Yanjun and Ning Shirwei immediately and forge the two pieces of evidence. She hurried to the parking lot, and just as she got in the car, the phone rang suddenly. Big sister. Ning Yuyin answered the phone, and Ning Sijia's tired voice came. Third sister, there is an emergency at home. Please come to the hospital quickly. Ning Yuyin was stunned and asked in confusion, Sister, is fourth sister sick again? No, fourth sister is much better now. The real urgent matter is that our whole family has decided to sever ties with Ning Muyun. What? Ning Yuyin was shocked and instantly overjoyed when she heard it. Really? Dad agreed too. Well, after some persuasion, Dad agreed. Ning Sijia's voice was low, but full of determination. This time, not only do I want him to return all the money he has taken from home over the years, but I also want him to return the money that Grandpa gave him. Ning Yuyin's face flushed with excitement after hearing this. Yes, that's how it should be. He doesn't deserve to take the Ning family's money. After she hung up the phone, a malicious smile appeared on her face. Little beast, let's see how arrogant you can be this time. Die alt Mustakastang Ning Muyun. You owe our Ning family 10 million. After Ning Yuyin hurriedly drove away from the company, Royun culture returned to peace. 2 hours later, in the quiet corridor on the top floor, the door of the chairman's office suddenly opened. Ning Muyin rushed out with a red face and a bright red lipstick mark on his right cheek. Well, Yinro, I will find time to meet with Sister Yunyin in the next 2 days, and you can have a good chat then, and do your best in the competition, and I will definitely go on the day you win the prize. Ning Muyin spoke incoherently and fled in a hurry, with embarrassment clearly visible on his face. Zhu Yunru leaned against the door, laughing so hard that her body shook. Mu Yun, the elevator is on the other side. Ning Muyin pretended not to hear, hurriedly ran down the stairs, and disappeared around the corner as if escaping. Zhu Yunru stood at the door and smiled for a long time, her eyes full of sweetness. After returning to the office, she looked at the half-drunk lemonade Ning Muyin had on the table, took a sip, and her face flushed. Sitting back at the desk, Zhu Yunru stared at the design drawing that Ning Muyin had revised with a gentle look and sighed. Muyin, why are you always so talented? I spent a month thinking hard about the design drawing, but you made it so perfect with just a few strokes. She picked up the pen and modified the entire design according to Ning Muyun's suggestion, with a satisfied smile on her face. Then, she added another name to the design, Ning Muyun. Now, it's the work of both of us. I will participate in the competition in the name of both of us. On the day of the awards ceremony, don't forget your promise. Zhu Yunru chuckled to herself. Suddenly, there was a knock on the office door. Please come in. Zhu Yunru looked at the female president who came in with a smile. Chairman, has the second largest shareholder left? The female president asked respectfully. Him? He just ran away. Zhu Yunru replied with a smile. He ran away? The female CEO was confused. Chairman, what's his name? Zhu Yunru gave a sly smile. You must have heard his name a lot in the news recently, right? News? The female president was even more confused. Ning Muyun, Zhu Yunru said lightly. What? Is it really that Ning Muyun? The female president widened her eyes in shock. Yes, the scandals about girlfriends and promiscuous women and sexually transmitted diseases reported in the media were referring to him. The female CEO's face changed, and she quickly said, Chairman, I will notify Feng Yin immediately to stop calming public opinion for Ning Yuyin. No need. Zhu Yunru waved her hand with a calm tone. Chairman, the company's stock price will plummet, and the loss will be hundreds of millions. The female president was anxious. Zhu Yunru looked out the window and chuckled. If hundreds of millions can get that piece of meat from a pack of wolves, it's worth throwing it away. The female CEO suddenly realized. Chairman, are you going to set up a trap? Zhu Yunru smiled, her back revealing mystery. Who knows? At the same time, Ning Muyin finally walked out of the elevator, his face calm again. Just as he was about to leave, his cell phone suddenly rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Hello? Who is this? A familiar and disgusted voice came from the other end of the phone. Ning Muyin, you little beast, get out of here immediately to the First People's Hospital. We are going to cut off all ties with you. Break ties! Ning Muyin sneered, his brows relaxed. Are the 9 signatures ready? It's ready. Come over here and sign it. Ning Muyun's face turned cold, and his voice was full of disdain. Okay, I'll go to the hospital now and cut off all ties with you beasts. Chapter 70 Zhang Yunfei. Brother Muyun, can you please forgive me? After Ning Sijia hung up the phone, Ning Muyun's eyes flashed coldly, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Bitch, you still want 10 million? I want to see if you have the life to take it. He put away his phone and was about to go to the bank to withdraw money when Zhang Yunfei suddenly ran over from the other side and shouted anxiously, Brother Muyun! When Ning Muyun heard her voice, his face darkened. He remembered the time when she said in front of everyone that she didn't know him. The disgust that arose in his heart made him turn around and leave. Brother Muyun, wait a minute. Zhang Yunfei stood in front of him breathlessly, with grievance in her eyes. Why did you say you don't know me? Are you still angry with me? Ning Muyun turned his head coldly, his voice as cold as ice. Isn't this what you expected? Zhang Yunfei was stunned. Recalling the hurt she had caused Ning Muyun, her face turned pale. She quickly explained, That's not what I meant. I really couldn't help it that day. It doesn't matter what you were thinking at that time. Ning Muyun interrupted her, his eyes cold. From now on, we are strangers. The 8 years of hard work I put into you have been wasted. The sister I protected is dead. Zhang Yunfei burst into tears and cried desperately. Brother Muyun, I was wrong. I really didn't mean it. Can you forgive me? Ning Muyun didn't even give her a chance to explain. He turned and left, leaving Zhang Yunfei standing there, crying inconsolably. At this time, PR Director Feng Yin came over, and seeing Zhang Yunfei's appearance, she said coldly, Come with me. The president wants to see you. Zhang Yunfei's heart tightened. She wiped away her tears and asked in a low voice, Director, what does the president want me to do? Feng Yin glanced at her and said coldly, I don't know. You'd better pray for yourself. When the elevator reached the top floor, Zhang Yunfei just got off the elevator and saw the female president standing there coldly. Her heart skipped a beat, and she quickly greeted her respectfully. President. The female CEO's eyes were cold, and her voice was dignified. The chairman wants to see you. Chairman? Zhang Yunfei was stunned with shock. She followed the president nervously until she reached the door of the chairman's office. Please come in. Zhu Yunru's gentle voice came from inside. At the same time, Ning Muyun left Royuan culture and came to the bank. He brought a 100-inch black suitcase and prepared to withdraw a large amount of money. He went directly to the bank manager to request VIP service. At this moment, Song Jianhao walked into the bank with a charming woman in his arms. He saw Ning Muyun and felt unhappy, so he smiled provocatively. Is Manager Qian here? Song Jianhao greeted the bank manager enthusiastically, deliberately showing off in front of the woman that he was a big client of the bank. When Manager Qian saw Song Jianhao, he immediately left Ning Muyun behind and went to meet him. Mr. Song, are you going to withdraw a large amount again today? Song Jianhao challenged proudly. Poor bastard, so what if you came first? I am the big customer here, so of course the manager should serve me first. Ning Muyun walked up to Song Jianhao with a cold face and said in a cold voice, Get out of here, scumbag. Chapter 71 Ning Muyun. Song Jianhao, are you defeated now? Ning Muyun, you are a woman with a sexually transmitted disease, and you are qualified to scold me? Song Jianhao sneered with arrogance on his face. You scumbag, stop spitting blood on me here. Slander? Humph. Song Jianhao took out his cell phone, played a video, and handed it to Ning Muyun. Look for yourself. Is this your sister? Ning Muyun looked down and saw Ning Yuyin on the screen, tearfully slandering him in front of reporters. He was detained on the eve of his wedding because of his girlfriend's impotence, and he also had a sexually transmitted disease. Anger surged in his heart like a flame. This bitch actually dared to destroy his reputation in public. However, Ning Muyun quickly calmed down from his anger. He had never appeared on the internet. So how did these people know that he was Ning Muyun? My family died a long time ago. Ning Muyun responded coldly. This woman is not my sister. Song Jianhao sneered and his eyes fell on Ning Muyun's face. Then how do you explain the lipstick mark on your right cheek? Ning Muyun was stunned, and he reached out to touch his face, and he felt a touch of rose red. He instantly thought of Zhu Yunru's enthusiasm in the office, and suddenly felt helpless, secretly cursing Yunru for harming him. Ning Muyun wiped off the lipstick marks, too lazy to bother with Song Jianhao anymore, and said directly to the lobby manager, Manager Qian, I came here first, please process my business in order. Song Jianhao was even more proud and taunted. This guy looks like a poor fellow. How much money can he have? Manager Qian, you better process it for me first. The lobby manager was in a dilemma, not knowing what to do. At this moment, a familiar voice came from behind. Oh, Mr. Song. A slick man came over. It was Liu Pengfei. When he saw Ning Muyun, a trace of contempt flashed in his eyes. Ning Muyun's eyes instantly turned cold as ice. This was the scum who had ruined Han Yunxuan's life. In his previous life, he had forced Han Yunxian to the point of committing suicide, and even participated in her own tragedy. Ning Muyun suppressed the anger in his heart, and decided to let this scum pay back the pain he had inflicted on others bit by bit. Liu Pengfei stepped forward and boasted. Mr. Song spent 2 million at once. He really deserves to be a big shot. Ning Muyun said coldly. Liu Pengfei, I'm afraid that all the clothes on your body are not even as good as the suitcase in my hand. Liu Pengfei's face flushed, and he became angry and said, So what if you have money? You still have to stand in line behind Mr. Song. Song Jianhao was full of pride and began to sneer at Ning Muyun. No matter how capable you are just a joke in front of me. The lobby manager immediately stood on Song Jianhao's side and said, Mr. Song is a VIP customer of our bank. Please wait a moment. Ning Muyun's eyes turned cold instantly. He took out his cell phone and made a call. Mr. Lan, I'm at your branch and want to withdraw money, but I'm having some trouble. Not long after, a car quickly stopped at the door of the bank, and the bank president hurried in. Seeing Ning Muyun, he greeted him respectfully. Mr. Ning, how much money do you want to withdraw? I will do it for you personally. Ning Muyun glanced coldly at the stunned Song Jianhao and Liu Pengfei and said lightly, 10 million. Thank you for your trouble. 10 million? Manager Qian's face changed instantly, and the pride on Song Jianhao's face disappeared instantly. Ning Muyun smiled and looked at the furious Song Jianhao. A scum like you get furious when you see others are rich? Song Jianhao's face turned pale, and he stammered. How could you have so much money? A frog in the well, sitting in the well and looking at the sky. Ning Muyun sneered and walked into the VIP room accompanied by the bank president, leaving Song Jianhao alone, shaking with anger. D72 Zhang, a punch hit Ning Muyun's stinky face. Ning Muyun's fist, filled with coldness and anger, smashed hard into Ning Muyun's face. She was instantly knocked away and hit the wall of the ward with a dull sound. Ning Muyun covered her face and fell to the ground in a mess. Shock and anger filled her eyes. She seemed to be unable to believe that Ning Miyun dared to do something to her. The other people in the ward were also stunned by the scene in front of them. The atmosphere suddenly froze, as if a tight string would break at any time. Sister, why are you still standing there? Hurry up and get someone to deal with this little bastard. Ning Shirwei was the first to react and yelled at Ning Yanjun. But Ning Muyun's eyes were like a blade, sweeping across everyone in the room, as if declaring his determination at the moment. He walked to the bed, stared at Ning Sijia with cold eyes, and then put the suitcase in his hand heavily on the ground with a bang. Aren't you going to break off relations with me? This is the money you want. Ning Muyun's voice was as cold as ice, as if it came from hell. 10 million, all here. You. Ning Sijia looked at the suitcase full of money. A trace of greed flashed in her eyes, and then she quickly covered it up. She stood up from the bed and tried to keep her voice calm, but she couldn't hide the fear in her heart. Since you've taken the money, sign the severance agreement. Ning Miyun raised the corner of his mouth with a slight sneer. I will sign the letter of severance. However, today, you must pay for every word you just said. His eyes were stern, staring at these former family members like a judge. What do you want to do? Ning Shirwei took a step back in panic, her face pale. Ning Miyun approached step by step, as if he wanted everyone to feel his anger and determination at the moment. I will take back everything that your Ning family owes me. Every one of you will not have an easy time. Ning Miyun stared at Ning Yuyin with a cold gaze and took a sudden step forward. The right hand tied with scarlet bandage clenched tightly. He punched Ning Yuyin's stinky face hard. The atmosphere in the ward suddenly became depressing to the extreme. Tapdir yetmiş uç Ning Shiru, Ning Muyun. I'm going to kill you. Ning Shirwei was kicked away by Ning Muyun and hit the wall of the ward hard with a bang. She curled up on the ground, holding her stomach in so much pain that she couldn't even scream. She could only tremble continuously, her eyes filled with resentment and anger. The Ning family members in the ward watched this scene with pale faces. No one expected that Ning Muyun would really be so cruel. Ning Sijia suppressed her fear and roared. Ning Muyun, you beast, if you dare to attack our Ning family today, we will never let you go. Let me go. Ning Muyun sneered, his eyes full of contempt and coldness. He approached Ning Sijia step by step, his tone full of murderous intent. Ning Sijia, how have you, the Ning family, treated me over the years? Do you still expect me to show mercy to you? From today on, I will make you pay double for every debt the Ning family owes me. Ning Sijia looked at Ning Muyun's terrifying eyes. Her heart went cold. Her body retreated involuntarily, but she refused to give in. If you dare to touch us again today, we, the Ning family, will make sure you have a miserable life. Ning Muyun suddenly laughed after hearing this. His laughter was cold and mocking. He looked at the Ning family with contempt and said in a cold tone, You don't have to threaten me. I am no longer the Ning Muyun who lets you manipulate me. Everything today is just the beginning. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Muyun pulled out a wad of cash from his suitcase and threw it in front of Ning Sijia coldly. This is the money you want, 10 million. Take it and get out of my world. Ning Sijia looked at the pile of cash with a greedy look on her face, but before she could reach out to grab it, Ning Muyun suddenly said, However, I want you to remember that from today on, I have nothing to do with your Ning family. If you dare to provoke me again, you will bear the consequences. The ward was dead silent. The air seemed frozen. The faces of the Ning family members were ashen, and no one dared to say a word. Ning Muyun glanced at them coldly, turned and left, his back looking so resolute. Chapter 74 Ning Jibu's screams continued to ring out. Every punch Ning Muyun threw seemed to carry all the anger and humiliation he had accumulated over the years, hitting Ning Jibu's face heavily. Blood splattered everywhere, and Ning Jibu's screams gradually became weaker, and finally he could not even make a sound, only vague gasps. His face was already bloody, and his original appearance could not be seen at all. The Ning family in the ward were completely panicked. Ning Sijia, Ning Yuyin, and others retreated in fear, but did not dare to approach. They looked at the hellish scene in front of them, and fear spread infinitely in their hearts. They had never seen Ning Muyun like this before. There was no trace of pity in his eyes, only hatred and cold, murderous intent. Mei Yuanyun trembled and shouted, Ning Muyun, stop it. You are going to beat him to death. However, Ning Muyun's fist did not stop, and his voice was as cold as a knife. What you did to me in the past, now you should know the taste of paying back the debt. His words seemed to come from hell, making people shudder. Just when the Ning family was almost in despair, there was a sudden sound of hurried footsteps at the door, and several security guards rushed in and hurriedly pulled Ning Muyun and Ning Jibo apart. Ning Muyun's fist was forced to stop. He stood up, panting, and glanced coldly at everyone in the Ning family, his eyes filled with endless contempt and disgust. From today on, I, Ning Muyun, have nothing to do with your Ning family anymore. You are not worthy of calling me brother anymore, and you are not worthy of giving me orders anymore, he said slowly, with a resolute and cold threat in his voice. After saying that, Ning Muyun turned around and pushed the suitcase full of cash. Everyone's face was pale, as if they had just experienced a nightmare of life and death. In the ward, the wailing of the Ning family gradually sounded, but this cry was mixed with fear and endless regret. Chapter 75, Mei Yuan Yuan. I will not let you go even if I become a ghost. Ning Muyun waved the stack of 100 yuan bills in his hand and slapped Ning Tsangmu's face with a crisp snap sound. The edge of the bill scratched his skin, causing a stinging pain, making Ning Tsangmu stand there in a daze, his face flushed. He was just proudly preparing to accept the 10 million in cash, but now he was being humiliated by his own son with money. Before Ning Tsangmu could react, the coldness in Ning Muyun's eyes had already spread to the whole audience like a tide. He approached step by step, his tone cold and firm. Today, I must get back all the debts you owe me over the years. When Mei Yuan Yuan saw her husband being beaten, her anger instantly exploded, and she screamed uncontrollably. How dare you hit your father? You unfilial beast. She stood up suddenly and tried to rush towards Ning Muyun, but was shocked by Ning Muyun's cold eyes, and her footsteps stopped abruptly. Filial piety? Ning Muyun sneered, his voice like a cold blade cutting through everyone's ears. Have you ever cared about me in the slightest? I have tolerated you for so many years, and today I will settle the score. Without any hesitation, he raised his hand and threw the thick stack of banknotes at Mei Yuan Yuan's face again. Mei Yuan Yuan screamed, and the pain on her face, along with the humiliation, almost made her lose her balance. Ning Sijia finally reacted at this time. She picked up the phone on the ground and hurriedly called the police. Police! Come quickly. Someone is beating people here. But Ning Muyun no longer paid attention to her shouting. His eyes were like torches, slowly sweeping over everyone in the room. Ning Jibwa, Ning Yuyin, and Ning Shirwei were all wailing on the ground, while Mei Yuan Yuan and Ning Tsangmu had lost their dignity after being beaten. The entire Ning family was in a mess. Ning Muyun's voice was icy cold. You Ning family members have always thought that I am weak and can be bullied, but you are wrong. From today on, I have nothing to do with you. This debt has just begun. After saying that, Ning Muyun turned around and left without looking back. Behind him were the Ning family's panicked cries for help and the sound of the alarm bells ringing continuously. He opened the door and walked into the outside world. The sunlight shone on him, which seemed to symbolize a brand new beginning. However, the Ning family was gradually heading towards the fate they deserved. Chapter 76, Ning Tsangmu. Why are you so partial? Ning Muyun stood in front of his father, Ning Tsangmu, and the $100 bill in his hand was like a sharp blade, slapping him in the face. The sharp edge of the bill instantly cut several bloody marks on Ning Tsangmu's face, and warm blood flowed down the corners of his mouth. This scene seemed to be a replica of the time many years ago when Ning Muyun was beaten by his father until his mouth was bleeding. At that time, Ning Muyun was just a teenager who was bullied by others, but now he is no longer that child who is controlled by others. Rebellious son, how dare you attack me? Ning Tsangmu shouted angrily, trying to raise his hand to fight back. However, Ning Muyun did not give him any chance. A heavy punch hit Ning Tsangmu's armpit, causing him to lose all his strength in an instant. His arms fell limply, unable to resist anymore. His screams echoed in the room, and the other people in the Ning family were already shocked by this scene and didn't know what to do. Ning Tsangmu, you beast! Ning Muyun was furious. Recalling all the abuse his father had inflicted on him over the years, the anger in his eyes almost burst out. 13 years. For a full 13 years, I was abandoned by your Ning family. You didn't take me back because you felt guilty, but because you were doing it for your own benefit. I wanted to repair this family relationship, but what about you? You never treated me as a family member. Ning Muyun swung his fist down again and again, each time carrying with him years of suppressed anger. The banknotes came into close contact with Ning Sangmu's swollen cheek and blood splattered. The white tiles on the ground were stained red, and that touch of red seemed to be the release of the pain and hatred that had been pent up in Ning Muyun's heart for many years. What have you given me all these years? Only beatings and kicks. Only humiliation. Ning Muyun roared, and the $100 bill was now stained scarlet with blood. He looked at his father's bloody face and continued to wave the money in his hand mercilessly, as if the banknotes were his only weapon. You owe me. It's your Ning family that owes me. Ning Muyun's voice became louder and louder, and the atmosphere in the room was almost suffocating. Ning Sangmu curled up on the ground in pain, unable to fight back at all, and could only helplessly endure Ning Muyun's anger. At this time, Ning Sangmu's wife, Mei Yuanyuan, couldn't stand it anymore and rushed forward to stop Ning Muyun. Little beast, how dare you hit your father? She screamed, but the next second, Ning Muyun kicked her in the face without hesitation. Mei Yuanyuan fell heavily to the ground and screamed miserably. My mother? Are you qualified to say that you are my mother? Ning Muyun approached Mei Yuanyuan step by step. The anger in his eyes could almost burn everything. I warned you a long time ago. Don't call yourself my mother again, he said, grabbing Mei Yuanyuan's hair and fiercely lifting her up from the ground. Mei Yuanyuan was terrified and struggled in pain, but her struggle seemed so futile in Ning Muyun's cold eyes. Mei Yuanyuan tried to grab Ning Muyun's eyes with her hands. Her nails were sharp and vicious. However, Ning Muyun had already seen through her intention and grabbed her fingers and twisted them violently. Accompanied by a crisp crack sound, Mei Yuanyuan let out a heart-wrenching scream. Her fingers were twisted backwards, and the pain made her whole body spasm. I will eventually get back everything the Ning family owes me, Ning Muyun said in a low voice, his voice as cold as ice. Chapter 77, 13 years. 4,745 days. I miss you every day. Mei Yuanyuan's fingers were twisted by Ning Muyun so hard that they hurt to the bone. The pain from her fingers to her heart made her whole body tremble. Her screams echoed throughout the room, and each one seemed to announce her despair and helplessness to the world. At this moment, she was in so much pain that she couldn't even faint and could only continue to suffer in agony. Ning Muyun had no mercy at all. His eyes were as cold and sharp as a knife, and he did not hide his resentment towards this so-called mother. Thinking back to the evil things Mei Yuanyuan had done to him, the past hurts were far more severe than her current pain. Ning Muyun could no longer suppress his anger and threw Mei Yuanyuan to the ground, right in front of the mountain of banknotes. Mom! The screams of the Ning sisters filled the room, their eyes full of shock. They had never thought that Ning Muyun would dare to attack Mei Yuanyuan, and Mei Yuanyuan's fingers had already twisted into a horrifying shape. Mei Yuanyuan lay on the ground, howling in pain uncontrollably. Ah, my hand. It's broken. Broken. How dare you do this to your mother? Her voice was full of pain and despair, but also mixed with endless anger. Ning Muyun looked at Ning Sijia, who had no courage to step forward coldly, his eyes full of disgust. You don't deserve it. He spat out cold words and ignored her. Mei Yuanyuan used to be that high and mighty noble lady, but now she is paying for her sins just like the pain she once inflicted. Ning Muyun slowly approached Mei Yuanyuan, and every step he took was like a death knell for her. Mei Yuanyuan heard the footsteps and began to crawl out in fear, but Ning Muyun easily grabbed her back and dragged her back to the ground. Do you still remember the first day I returned to the Ning family? Ning Muyun's low voice was like a judgment from hell, cold and ruthless. Aye. Mei Yuanyuan's voice trembled. She wanted to struggle, but her strength had long been exhausted by the pain. The fear in her eyes became more and more obvious, and Ning Muyun's sneer made her even more helpless. That day, your family was having a meal at the dining table, having a great time with that bastard, and I was standing at the door, just calling you Mom. But you slapped me. Why? Ning Muyun's voice gradually became fierce, and the scenes in his memories made him furious. Mei Yuanyuan lowered her head guiltily, her lips trembling, but she couldn't give any reason. I was trafficked for 13 years. I haven't seen you for 13 years. I missed you in my home every day in the orphanage. But when I returned home, I was slapped in the face. I just called you Mom. Why did you do this to me? Ning Muyun's voice echoed in the room, grief and hatred intertwined in his heart. Mei Yuanyuan finally broke down. She sobbed and apologized. I hit you at that time, just because you were uneducated. That's why I hit you. Her voice was intermittent, and tears mixed with blood dripped onto the ground. No manners. Ning Muyun's eyes were as cold as ice. He suddenly slammed Mei Yuan into the pile of banknotes again. Scarlet blood stained the banknotes. At that moment, the air in the room seemed to freeze. Ning Muyun's voice was low and cold. Mei Yuan, you should pay for everything you have done. Chapter 78, Ning Shuxian. I want to see who is better between you and me. Pa! There was another crisp sound, and the other side of Mei Yuan's face swelled up rapidly. Mei Yuan, it's not that I'm uneducated. It's you who are blind. Ning Muyun stared at her coldly, his voice icy and piercing. Whoa, stop hitting me, please. Mei Yuan begged in tears, tears streaming down her cheeks, her voice miserable and helpless. Bastard son, since I returned to the Ning family, you have never looked at me straight in the eye. Ning Muyun's anger was like a volcanic eruption. Which rule did that bastard follow? He caused trouble from high school to college, and he blamed all the mistakes on me. You call this education? On Grandpa's 70th birthday, he stuck 3 chopsticks into Grandpa's rice bowl in public, clearly cursing Grandpa. But what about you? You protected him and pushed me out to let Ning Songmu and your daughters beat me up. Is this your upbringing? Mei Yuan was pale, in so much pain that she couldn't control herself, but she still wanted to defend herself. I was wrong. Jibo was young at that time, and didn't know better. Pa! Ning Muyun slapped her hard on the face again, and Mei Yuan's nose started to bleed warm blood again. A 20-year-old doing that kind of thing? You say you're immature? Then why do you say I'm uneducated when I first called you mom when I was 16? Ning Muyun's voice was filled with uncontrollable anger. Why? Mei Yuan was no longer able to resist and could only cry in pain. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I was wrong. Ning Muyun's anger did not subside at all. What's the use of apologizing now? Can you take back the pain I have suffered? His eyes were extremely cold, and his disgust was fixed on Mei Yuan who was lying on the ground. You have always been partial to Ning Jibua, that bastard who came out of nowhere. I was kidnapped. Why didn't you continue to look for me? Do you know that I've been waiting for you in the orphanage for 13 years? Do you know how much I have suffered? Why don't you come to find me? Ning Muyun's roar resounded throughout the room. He grabbed Mei Yuan's hair and slammed her into the pile of money. The banknotes were splashed with bright red liquid. At that moment, Mei Yuan could no longer refute and could only scream heartbreakingly. Stop hitting me. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Ning Muyun looked down at her coldly. You said you were afraid that Ning Jibua would think too much, so you treated me harshly? Ha. His laughter was extremely sad, and tears actually flowed from his eyes. You treat other people's bastards better than your own sons. You are truly the best person in ancient and modern times. Ning Muyun's tone was full of sarcasm and pain. I'm sorry. I was wrong to swear. I take it back. Mei Yuan burst into tears, her voice choked with sobs. It's too late. Ning Muyun sneered. From the moment I woke up, everything was too late. He threw Mei Yuan towards the window, and she hit the tempered glass hard, falling to the ground like a puddle of mud. Mei Yuan's crying made the atmosphere in the room even more depressing. She kept repeating, I'm sorry, but Ning Muyun's anger did not diminish at all. Suddenly, Ning Shuxian and Ning Sijia rushed up like crazy. Little beast, how dare you hit your mother? The 2 sisters shouted hysterically and tried to push Ning Muyun away. Ning Muyun slapped them back, and they fell to the ground, wailing in pain. Ning Muyun looked at them coldly, his eyes full of disgust. I will get back what you owe me today. Ning Muyun no longer paid attention to the crying Mei Yuan, grabbed Ning Shuxian and Ning Sijia's hair, and slammed them together. The screams of the 2 sisters filled the whole room, and blood splattered everywhere. Ning Muyun sneered. Today, let me see who dies first, you or me. Chapter 79, Ning Sijia. I'll make you remember how you beat me again. Ah! Ning Shuxian screamed, pushed Ning Muyun away, and rushed towards him furiously, her sharp nails slashing at Ning Muyun's body like a blade. In an instant, several blood marks appeared on his skin, and the severe pain made his nerves tense again. The rapid secretion of adrenaline restored Ning Muyun's strength, and the anger in his body burst out like a raging fire. He punched Ning Shuxian and shouted with gritted teeth. Don't you want to kill me? Come on, I want to see if you can do it. Ning Shuxian's hands frantically tore at Ning Muyun, and their fists collided again and again, with a sound as shocking as thunder. In the room, everyone was silent. and no one dared to step forward. Ning Shuxian, don't you beat me half to death every time you get mad? Keep going. Beat me. Ning Muyun roared, punching me again and again. Don't you always do this cruelly every time you go crazy? Let's see today. Who dies first? You or me? Ning Shuxian was knocked to the ground by Ning Muyun's heavy punch again, and her screams became weak and painful at this moment. Ning Sijia had already burst into tears and rushed over to stop him. Stop hitting her. You're going to beat her to death. If she gets sick again, she will really die. Ning Muyun sneered, fiercely pushed Ning Sijia away, and continued to punch Ning Shuxian. Hit me. Don't you like to hit me? Come on. Ning Shuxian struggled frantically, grabbing everything around her and throwing it at Ning Muyun, but it was useless in the face of his anger. Ning Muyun punched her again and again until she fell to the ground again. Ning Shuxian was panting and weak, her claws weakly scratching the air, and blood was already flowing from the corners of her mouth. However, her madness did not end there. Ning Shuxian bit Ning Muyun's fist dichtly. Blood spurted from her fist. The extreme pain instantly ignited the last bit of rationality in Ning Muyun's heart. He roared, "Bite me. I'll let you bite me." Ning Muyun grabbed the banknotes on the ground and forced them into Ning Shuxian's mouth. Don't you like to force me to eat garbage? Today, I'll let you taste this money. Eat it. The banknotes blocked Ning Shuxian's throat. She rolled her eyes, struggled desperately, and began to foam at the mouth. Ning Sijia could no longer bear it and suddenly kicked Ning Muyun away and quickly took the banknotes out of Ning Shuxian's mouth. Ning Shuxian coughed violently, lying weakly on the ground, crying, "Big sister, I'm so scared. Don't be afraid. It's okay. I'm here." Ning Sijia trembled as she comforted Ning Shuxian, but she didn't notice that Ning Muyun was standing behind her gloomily. "Aren't you afraid with you here?" Ning Muyun asked coldly, grabbing Ning Sijia's hair and lifting her up. She screamed in pain, but Ning Muyun's eyes were still cold. "Ning Sijia, do you remember? You used to grab me like this and beat me hard. Today, I'll let you remember it again." Ning Sijia gritted her teeth and shouted angrily, "I don't remember. I forgot. Forgot." Ning Muyun's eyes flashed with a sharp light. "Then I will help you remember it." Chapter 80. Ning Sijia, you have always beaten, scolded, and abused me. Do you remember? Ning Sijia screamed in pain. "Ah, it hurts. You little beast. Let me go." The severe pain at the roots of her hair made her face twisted, and the wound on her face that had not healed opened again, and blood dripped down her cheek. Her heart was tormented by fear and anger. She wanted to escape, but she couldn't watch her family being humiliated. "Let me go. Otherwise I..." Ning Sijia hadn't finished her threat when a slap landed hard on her face. "Shut up." Ning Muyun stared at her coldly, his voice as piercing as ice. "Today, I want you to remember what you did to me in the past." Ning Sijia felt dizzy and shocked. How could this cowardly and incompetent brother a few days ago become so terrible? She didn't have time to think about it. Fists hit her like a rainstorm. Snap! Another loud slap, and warm blood spurted out of her nose. "Ning Sijia." Ning Muyun's voice was cold and ruthless. "On the first night I returned to the Ning family, you beat me so hard that my nose bled. You also made me kneel in the garden all night. Do you remember?" Ah! Before Ning Sijia finished speaking, another slap. "And on my first birthday, you slapped me hard because of that bastard's instigation and fed the cake I bought to the wild dogs. Do you remember?" Ning Muyun punched Ning Sijia in the face. The pain made her temporarily blind, and everything went dark before her eyes. Ning Muyun glanced coldly at Ning Ranran, who was shivering in the corner, and continued, "The night before the college entrance examination, you believed Ning Ranran's lies and smashed my eyes with a cup so that I could only use one eye to take the exam the next day. Do you remember? Stop hitting me. Stop hitting me." Mei Yuanyuan cried, "Son, stop hitting me. It's all my fault. Stop hitting your sisters." Ning Muyun turned his head, a hint of sarcasm on his lips. "Mei Yuanyuan, is this the first time you call me son?" Mei Yuanyuan was stunned, and then her whole body trembled violently. Ning Muyun suddenly laughed, and tears flowed out of his eyes. "Once, I envied that bastard so much. He could hear your affectionate call every day, but I never heard you call me son. Now, I beat you half to death, and you finally called me son. Ha ha!" Mei Yuanyuan burst into tears and was choked with sobs, unable to speak. She could only keep apologizing. I'm sorry. Apologize? No thanks. The smile on Ning Muyun's face disappeared, and he said coldly, I don't need your son anymore. Didn't you say that you wanted to strangle me to death when I was born? Woo, that's not what I meant. Mei Yuanyuan shook her head desperately and cried in despair. Don't explain. Ning Muyun's voice was like a knife piercing her heart. I also wanted to use money to beat you to death just now. But don't worry, I won't let you die so easily. You and I have sworn a solemn oath. You want me to die a miserable death, and I want you to suffer so much that you can neither live nor die. Mei Yuanyuan collapsed on the ground, wailing, Don't do this. I was wrong. Ning Muyun's eyes were as cold as ice, and he approached step by step. Did I warn you not to say that you are my mother again? Ah! Mei Yuanyuan was so scared that she stepped back repeatedly, crying at the top of her lungs. Ning Sijie gritted her teeth and rushed forward, trying to stop Ning Muyun. Don't touch Mom. Ning Muyun showed no mercy, grabbed her hair, and threw her hard onto Mei Yuanyuan. Ning Sijie screamed miserably, and Ning Muyun punched her hard in the stomach and roared, Ning Sijie, the day I went to college, you stepped on my stomach to humiliate me because I didn't help that bastard clean up the dormitory. Do you remember? Ah! Ning Sijie cried out in pain, curled up on the ground holding her stomach. You abused me for 8 years. Do you remember? Ning Muyun's rage completely exploded, and he punched her madly. Remember? Do you remember? Chapter 81 Ning Shirwei. I'm waiting for you to come and kill me today. Every angry question from Ning Muyun was like a sharp blade piercing into Ning Sijie's heart, causing the past that had been suppressed deep in her memory to suddenly emerge. Those scenes were like a movie, replaying how she proudly used her identity as an elder sister to teach a lesson to the cowardly and incompetent Ning Muyun. Slaps, punches, and kicks. At that time, she thought these were all education for Ning Muyun, but now, these violence were like a spiral of retribution, all falling on her doubly. The pain made her realize that those seemingly easy beatings and scoldings were actually so cruel. With every punch, Ning Sijie was unable to make a sound. She no longer had the strength to resist and could only collapse on the ground like a puddle of mud, enduring Ning Muyun's anger and hatred. Ning Sijie, do you still remember what you did to me? Tell me. Ning Muyun's roar echoed in the ward, but Ning Sijie was no longer able to respond. She could only helplessly shed 2 tears of regret, which dripped onto the blood-stained banknotes. Mei Yuanyuan rushed to Ning Sijie and cried to stop her. Stop hitting her. You will beat her to death. It's all my fault. Please let her go. Get out of here. Ning Muyun punched Mei Yuanyuan, sending her back several steps, followed by a scream. The sound of the blows continued to echo in the room, and Ning Muyun vented his anger mercilessly until Ning Sijie could no longer move. He stared at her coldly, his tone cold. It seems that you still don't remember what I said, but it doesn't matter. We have plenty of time. I will make you remember. Ning Sijie's face was covered with scars and blood, and had long lost its original appearance. She trembled her fingers, as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she said nothing. Ning Muyun kicked her to the corner where banknotes were piled up, and turned his gaze to Ning Luoling. Ning Luoling, what did you mean when you said enough just now? Ning Muyun's voice was cold, and his eyes were as sharp as a knife. Ning Luoling was so frightened that she was shaking all over and stepped back in horror. Don't come over. Don't hurt me. Ning Muyun approached slowly, anger burning in his chest. Tell me, what do you mean by enough? At this moment, Ning Yanjun and Ning Yuyan suddenly jumped up. Ning Yanjun bit Ning Muyun's ankle, and Ning Yuyan pounced on his leg and bit it viciously. Ning Shirwei rushed forward, with the pen in her hand, pointing directly at Ning Muyun's heart with extreme ferocity. Bastard, I want you to die. Ning Ranran shouted excitedly, as if the chaos in front of her was the scene she most looked forward to. The severe pain ignited Ning Muyun's anger again. He knocked Ning Yi to the ground with a punch and kicked Ning Yanjun away. Facing Ning Shirwei's attack, Ning Muyun suddenly kicked out and kicked her to the ground. The screams of the three mixed together, and Ning Muyun's anger reached its peak. He walked in front of Ning Shirwei and stepped hard on her face. Aren't you a germaphobe? You like cleanliness? Then I'll use my shoe soles to treat you well. He pressed hard on Ning Shirwei's face. Ning Shirwei let out a sharp roar. Little beast, I'm going to kill you. Come on. Ning Muyun shouted loudly, with a crazy smile on his face. I'm right here, waiting for you to kill me. Chapter 83 Ning Yuyan. If you want to vomit, you have to vomit it all out. Ning Yuyin looked at Ning Muyun, approaching step by step with horror on her face, her voice full of panic. Little beast. What? What do you want to do? Don't come over here. There was obvious uneasiness in her warning. Ning Muyun did not respond, but just sneered, walked quickly to her, grabbed her, and lifted her up. Ah, it hurts so much. You little beast, let me go. Ning Yuyin struggled desperately, trying to get rid of Ning Muyun's control. However, her struggle was futile, and Ning Muyun hit her elbow hard. With two painful screams, Ning Yuyin's arms fell down weakly, unable to resist anymore. Why did you frame me in front of the media? You said that my girlfriend was impotent and had a sexually transmitted disease. Ning Muyun asked coldly, with icy anger in his eyes. Ning Yuyin sneered, but became even more arrogant. Did I say something wrong? You were just a ladybug. That girlfriend's woman even came to ask for money. Do you dare to deny it? When Ning Muyun mentioned this, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and he could not suppress his anger. He suppressed his anger and recalled the humiliation at that time. It was Ning Jibwa who used his name to cause trouble, but he became a scapegoat. Since you said that, why do you enjoy the lunchbox I made for you so much? Ning Muyun asked coldly, with a mocking smile on his lips. Bento? What bento? Ning Yuyin looked confused. Those lunchboxes you ate on the set. Ning Muyun sneered. You thought Ning Jibwa made them? Ning Yuyin was stunned, turned to look at Ning Jibwa, and asked, Jibwa, did you make those lunchboxes? Ning Jibwa huddled in the quilt, his eyes flickering, but he still said with a stiff upper lip, Of course I made it, third sister. I made those lunchboxes for you myself. Ning Yuyin breathed a sigh of relief, turned around and glared at Ning Muyun. Look, Jibo admitted it himself. Ning Muyun stared at Ning Jibwa coldly and said sarcastically, You can't even turn on the fire, and you can make soft-boiled eggs? You are really capable. Ning Jibwa was speechless and frantically explained, It's just boiling an egg. I can also boil it with a kettle. Ning Yuyin's expression suddenly changed, and the doubt in her eyes began to waver. She was allergic to eggs, but Ning Jibwa had no idea. Ning Muyun sneered, Ning Yuyin, you are allergic to eggs. The delicious lunchboxes you have eaten all these years were made by me with great effort. But you framed me, saying that I have a sexually transmitted disease, and slandered me in front of reporters. Now, after eating the food I made, do you also feel that you were sick? Ning Yuyin's face turned pale instantly, and her body trembled violently. Her stomach began to churn, and then she vomited violently. Ugh! Ugh! Ning Yuyin retched desperately, as if she wanted to vomit out everything she had eaten. The floor was splattered with vomit, and a foul smell filled the air. Ning Yuyin kicked her down into her own vomit and sneered down at her. If you want to vomit, spit out all the lunch boxes you've eaten over the years. Don't leave any behind. Chapter 84 Ning Luoling. Why did you abandon me back then? No. No. Ning Yuyin's face was covered with vomit. She sobbed hard, trying desperately to escape from Ning Muyun's control. However, Ning Muyun didn't give her any chance to breathe. Don't you want to vomit? Spit it out quickly. With Ning Muyun's roar, he suddenly exerted force. Ning Yuyin screamed in pain. Vomit poured out of her throat like a flood, splashing on the ground, and the air was filled with a pungent sour smell. Yes, just like you forced me to vomit it out before. Ning Muyun's eyes were as cold as a knife. Keep vomiting. Spit it all out. He punched Ning Yuyin one after another, as if venting the endless resentment in his heart. Every scream was accompanied by a gush of vomit. The pale yellow liquid mixed with residue kept overflowing from her mouth and splashing onto the floor, forming puddles of dirt. Ning Yuyin's face was full of pain and despair. Don't you dislike the lunchboxes I made for you? Then spit out all the more than 2,000 lunchboxes you have eaten. Ning Muyun's voice was full of cold sarcasm and hatred. Ning Yuyin was no longer able to resist. Her body was like a drained skin bag. She kept shaking under Ning Muyun's fist, and the sound of vomiting became weaker and weaker. The ward was in a mess, and the air was filled with a disgusting smell. Shun Xuani, who was peeping outside the door, was already trembling with fear. He hid behind the crack of the door secretly, and his heart was trembling. He had thought that Ning Muyun was a weak and incompetent waste, but he didn't expect that he would become so terrible, just like a madman. Oh my God, this is too horrible. Shin Xuani trembled as he witnessed Ning Muyun's brutal revenge on the Ning family. He wanted to rush in to save them, but his legs felt like they were filled with lead, and he couldn't move. Call the police. Let's let the police handle it. Shinshwani quickly took out his cell phone, quietly called the police, and continued to hide behind the door and observe the tragic situation in the ward. In the ward, the Ning family was in a state of disarray. Ning Sangmu was lying on the ground, his face swollen and bloody. Mei Yuanyuan covered her face and cried, begging Ning Muyan to stop. Ning Sijie collapsed on the ground like a puddle of mud, and Ning Shuxian huddled up, afraid of attracting attention. Ning Yanjun and Ning Shirwei were also covered in wounds and could hardly move. Ning Yuyin was already dying. Her vomiting sound gradually disappeared, and she was about to collapse. At this time, Ning Luoling could no longer bear it. Her eyes were full of guilt and self-blame. She cried loudly and threw herself at Ning Yuyin, protecting her under her body. "Stop hitting me. This is all my fault. It's my fault." Ning Luoling burst into tears and begged Ning Muyun. "I beg you, please let my third sister go, okay?" Ning Muyun slowly raised his head, his eyes as cold as ice. He walked to Ning Luoling, pinched her chin with his cold fingers, lifted her face, and said in a voice that sounded like it came from hell, "Ning Luoling, I only have one question for you." Ning Luoling trembled, tears streaming down her face. You ask. Why did you abandon me back then?" Chapter 85, Mei Yuan. Ning Luoling. Why did you do that? As soon as Ning Muyun finished speaking, Mei Yuan's eyes suddenly turned to Ning Luoling, full of shock and doubt. What happened back then has always been a scar in her heart that she doesn't want to touch. That day, she went to the hospital to visit her friend, and when she came back, Ning Muyun disappeared. In the living room, only Ning Luoling was crying. Mei Yuan almost went crazy and used all her strength to search for him, but found nothing. Ning Muyun's disappearance became her endless pain, until Ning Sangmu brought Ning Jibwa back. Her trauma was slightly relieved. Since then, Mei Yuan has been particularly fond of Ning Jibwa, fearing that he would leave her like Ning Muyun. She has put all her feelings into Ning Jibwa, and even after Ning Muyun came back, she deliberately treated Ning Muyun coldly in order not to make Ning Jibwa feel bad. She had always believed that Ning Muyun got lost because of her playfulness, and therefore she resented him. However, now, if Ning Muyun was abandoned by Ning Luoling, then the nature of the matter would be completely different. Mei Yuan's heart tightened. She couldn't imagine how terrible her behavior over the years would be if the truth was as Ning Muyun said. Ning Luoling felt her mother's burning gaze and panicked. That incident was a nightmare in her heart forever. She woke up in the middle of the night more than once, regretting her decision. At this moment, she was unable to face Mei Yuan's scrutiny and dared not admit the secret hidden deep in her heart. "I have never abandoned you." Ning Luoling choked and tried her best to deny it. Ning Muyun's eyes darkened instantly. His fingers tightly grasped Ning Luoling's chin. The pain made her face pale. "Don't tell the truth? I'll ask again. Why did you abandon me back then?" Ning Luoling trembled even more violently, and the guilt was like a huge rock pressing down on her, making it hard for her to breathe. But she still gritted her teeth, shook her head, and insisted. "I really didn't abandon you." Slap. The loud slapping sound echoed in the ward. Ning Luoling's face swelled instantly, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. She covered her face with horror in her eyes. "I'll ask you one last time. Have you ever abandoned me?" Ning Muyun's voice was as cold as ice. Faced with Ning Muyun's anger, Ning Luoling could no longer hold on and admitted with a sob. I lost you back then." "Why?" Mei Yuan's scream interrupted Ning Muyun's anger, and she questioned Ning Luoling with a shocked face. "Why did you do that?" Ning Luoling was frightened by her mother's questioning. She tried her best to find an excuse to get away with it, but Ning Muyun's roar made her words choke in her throat. "Shut up!" Ning Muyun shouted angrily, and the mother and daughter fell silent at the same time. He ignored Mei Yuan and stared at Ning Luoling. "Tell me, why did you abandon me?" Ning Luoling completely collapsed, covering her face and crying. She knew she could no longer hide the truth, but the fear in her heart made her cry. "I don't know. I really don't know." Bang! Another slap. Ning Luoling fell to the ground, crying intermittently, looking miserable. Ning Muyun's eyes were as cold as dead water. "Ning Luoling, it doesn't matter if you don't tell me. I will get the answer from you myself sooner or later." Chapter 86, Mom is wrong. Can you please not break off relations with her? "Well, I really don't know. I really don't know." Ning Luoling lay on the ground, crying bitterly. Regret and guilt Resentment and unwillingness intertwined in her heart, almost overwhelming her. In a trance, she felt that the world had completely collapsed. Ning Mian stood up and glanced at everyone in the ward indifferently, especially Ning Ranran, who was arrogant before but now shivered in bed. She had completely lost her previous arrogance and was as scared as if she was bitten by a snake. Ning Muyun's eyes were cold. He no longer had any feelings for these people. He just wanted to cut off all ties with them as soon as possible. He walked to the unconscious Ning Sangmu, raised his foot slightly, and gently pressed the back of Ning Sangmu's hand with the sole of his shoe. Ah! A scream resounded throughout the ward, and Ning Sangmu was awakened by the severe pain. He glared at Ning Muyun angrily, his eyes full of hatred. Rebellious son, how dare you hit your father? You will be struck by lightning. Ning Sangmu roared with gritted teeth. Ning Sangmu, you are not allowed to curse my son. Mei Yuanyuan on the side suddenly roared like crazy. Ning Mian turned around and glanced at Mei Yuanyuan, his tone as cold as ice. Mei Yuanyuan, if I hear you say the word son again, I will show no mercy to you. His eyes pierced her like a sharp blade, frightening Mei Yuanyuan so much that she trembled all over, hurriedly shut her mouth, sobbed, and dared not utter another word. Ning Miyun's eyes fell on Ning Sangmu again, and he said coldly, Aren't you going to sever ties with me? Stand up and sign now. Ning Sangmu's face was filled with pain, but he was still tough. You rebellious son. You want me to sign? I can, but the prerequisite is that you must give up the right to inherit all the Ning family's property, including the money your grandfather left you. Heh. Ning Miyun sneered. Ning Sangmu, you are such a beast. He suddenly stepped hard on the back of Ning Sangmu's hand, and blood oozed out from between his fingers. Ah! Ning Sangmu screamed in pain, but still gritted his teeth and persisted. He knew that Ning Muyin had to give up the property so that the Ning family could completely control the money. Enduring the pain, Ning Sangmu said in a deep voice, Unless you give up all your inheritance rights, I will never sign. Ning Muyun's eyes flashed coldly, and he looked at the man under his feet with disgust and said coldly, I have never been interested in your Ning family's money. He picked up the 2 severance agreements on the table and glanced at them. They were full of clauses requiring him to give up his inheritance rights. He threw the agreement hard on Ning Sangmu's face and said coldly, Sign it. Ning Sangmu struggled, his eyes full of resentment, but he finally succumbed to Ning Muyun's violence. His fingers were forcibly pressed on the agreement, leaving bloody fingerprints. Ning Muyun, you will not die well? Ning Sangmu roared hoarsely. Ha! Ning Muyun slapped him, and Ning Sangmu's cheeks suddenly swelled up. You are not worthy of saying such things. He sneered, put away the agreement, turned around, and walked towards Mei Yuanyuan, who was cowering in the corner. Mei Yuanyuan was already scared out of her wits. With tears in her eyes and endless regret and fear, she begged, Child, Mom was wrong. Don't break off relations with Mom, please. Ning Muyun remained unmoved, his voice extremely cold. Mei Yuanyuan, have you forgotten what I said? Mei Yuanyuan was suddenly startled, her eyes full of fear. She shook her head desperately and held her hands trembling in front of her to protect herself, as if he would attack her in the next second. You cursed me to die a miserable death. Have you forgotten it so quickly? Ning Muyun's voice was like the whisper of the god of death. Ah! Mei Yuanyuan screamed in fear. Tears blurred her vision, and her body began to tremble violently. Have you forgotten the abuse you have inflicted on me over the years? He asked coldly, his eyes as sharp as knives, breaking Mei Yuanyuan's last line of defense. I was wrong. Mei Yuanyuan finally couldn't help crying. Wrong. Ning Muyun sneered. You should have known this would happen. He didn't look at her again and turned away. Behind him, Mei Yuanyuan's crying echoed in the ward, like a sad elegy, echoing in everyone's heart, and could not be calmed for a long time. Chapter 87 Ning Sijia. Are you still alive? If you are, sign for me. Mei Yuanyuan sat in front of the window, crying bitterly. Her sadness was enough to make anyone feel pity. However, Ning Muyun, who was standing in front of her, had only cold eyes. Mei Yuanyuan, is all you can do is cry. There was no emotion in his voice. I. Mei Yuanyuan sobbed, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to explain, but the words got stuck in her throat and she couldn't speak. How could she explain why she cursed her own son so viciously? Why would she rather give all her love to that adopted son who had no blood relationship with her, but be so cruel to Ning Muyun? The guilt in her heart was like a knife cutting through her. She burst into tears and her voice trembled. Child, Mom was wrong. I will definitely make it up to you. Please don't break up with me, okay? Compensation? Ning Miyun sneered, his eyes filled with endless anger. How are you going to compensate me for the maternal love I've lost over the past 20 years? I will. How are you going to compensate me for the harm you have done to me after I return to the Ning family? And how are you going to take back those poisonous oaths you just made? He pressed on step by step, his voice piercing Mei Yuanyuan's heart like an ice thorn. Mei Yuanyuan was in so much pain that she couldn't speak. She could only cry more bitterly, as if crying could alleviate the guilt in her heart. She suddenly thought of something, looked up at Ning Muyun, and said excitedly, Child, as long as you don't break up with me, I will do whatever you ask me to do. Please. Ning Muyun sneered, with extreme sarcasm in his tone. You said, are you willing to do anything? Mei Yuanyuan nodded hurriedly, with a glimmer of hope in her tearful eyes. Yes, as long as you don't leave me. Anything is fine. Okay. Ning Muyun turned around and looked at Ning Jibwa, who was curled up in the quilt. His eyes were suffocatingly cold. Then go ahead and suffocate Ning Jibwa with a pillow. As long as you do it, I will not break off my relationship with you. Ah! Ning Jibwa turned pale with fear. He hurriedly climbed out of the bed and shouted, Mom, no, you can't listen to him. Mei Yuanyuan's face instantly lost all color. How could she do this? Although Ning Jibwa was not her biological son, she had raised him. How could she easily erase the feelings of more than 20 years? Letting her kill him with her own hands would be like asking for her life. Ning Miyun looked at Mei Yuanyuan standing there in a daze and said in a cold voice, What are you doing? Go quickly. Mei Yuanyuan was trembling all over. Her lips were pale, and she couldn't move at all. She could only look at Ning Muyun helplessly, her eyes full of despair and helplessness. Huh? Ning Muyun sneered, his eyes full of mockery. Didn't you say you're willing to do anything? Why? You can't do this one thing. Child, Mei Yuanyuan said with difficulty and a weak voice. Can you change the conditions? Ning Muyun sneered and said without hesitation. Change the conditions? Sure. He turned his eyes and fell on Ning Luoling, who was crying on the ground, and said in a cold tone, Then go and chop off Ning Luoling's hand. As long as you chop it off, I will not break off my relationship with you. Ah! Ning Luoling stepped back in fear, her face full of fear. Mom! No, don't listen to him. Mei Yuanyuan's face turned even paler. Ning Luoling was a violinist, and music was her life. If her hand was cut off, it would destroy all her dreams. How could she do such a thing? She looked at Ning Muyun helplessly, tears streaming down her face, her body shaking violently, but she couldn't utter a word. What's wrong? Can you do it? Ning Muyun asked coldly. Child, can you change the conditions? Mei Yuanyuan pleaded cautiously. Bang! Ning Muyun slapped her in the face mercilessly, and blood oozed from the corner of her mouth. She covered her face, tears and blood mixed together, and she was in great pain. You can't do anything, and you still dare to say you are willing to do everything? Ning Muyun stared at her coldly, without any mercy. Sign it. Put your fingerprints on these 2 severance agreements. Child, Mei Yuanyuan tried to save the situation, but Ning Muyun didn't want to delay any longer. Shut up, he shouted rudely, his eyes filled with cold determination. Sign. Don't force me to do it again. Mei Yuanyuan could no longer hold on, and tremblingly pressed her fingerprint on the agreement, tears blurring her vision. After signing, her heart felt like it was falling into an icy cave, with regret and guilt intertwined. Child, that's not what I meant. She cried and begged, her eyes full of helplessness. As expected, you still love yourself the most. Ning Muyun sneered, his eyes full of contempt. From now on, we will completely sever our relationship. You can continue to love your adopted son. Mei Yuanyuan broke down and cried. That's not what I meant. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Ning Muyun did not look back, but walked straight to the unconscious Ning Siji on the ground and said coldly, Are you still alive? If you are, sign for me. Chapter 88, I have completely severed all ties with your Ning family. Ning Sijia collapsed to the ground, her face covered in red and red. She listened to Ning Muyun's cold sarcasm, but she didn't even have the strength to raise her head to respond. Ning Sijia, you're silent after just a little suffering? Ning Muyun squatted down and looked at her coldly. The suffering you made me endure in the beginning was 10 or 100 times more than the pain I'm experiencing now. Can't stand it so soon. Ning Sija's body trembled slightly, as if she had heard something terrible, but she remained silent. Ning Muyun sneered, grabbed her fingers, and pressed scarlet handprints on the two agreements. The third one. He shook off Ning Sija's hand, stood up, and looked coldly at Ning Shuxian beside him. Ning Shuxian saw Ning Muyun approaching step by step, and she was so scared that she huddled up and trembled all over. She said with all her might, I don't have a pen. How can I sign? Ning Muyun glanced at her and sneered. Isn't there paint on your nose? Just press it with your fingers. As he said that, he handed over the agreement and stared at her coldly. Ning Shuxian glared at him angrily, then pressed her handprint with resentment, threw the agreement back, and said with gritted teeth, From today on, you have nothing to do with our Ning family. Pa! Ning Muyun slapped her, and Ning Shuxian's face swelled instantly, with blood oozing from the corners of her mouth. She glared at him and cursed, Little beast you, watch your mouth. If you dare to scold me again, I won't just give you a slap. Ning Muyun threatened coldly. Ning Shuxian had no choice but to grit her teeth and endure it, not daring to get angry again. The fourth one. He snorted coldly and walked in front of Ning Yuyin. Ning Yuyin had already fallen to the ground, covered in filth and emitting a pungent stench. Ning Muyun frowned, took out his phone and took a few photos of her, and sneered. If your fans saw you like this, they would probably be heartbroken, right? Don't worry, I will publish these artistic photos to let everyone see what you really look like. After saying that, he coldly pinched Ning Yuyin's fingers and pressed his fingerprints on the agreement. The fifth one. He walked to Ning Yanjun, who was rolling on the ground, and said with a sneer, It feels bad to have a spinal disease attack, right? Ning Yanjun burst into tears in pain and begged, Please, Mu Yun, give me a few injections. I really can't stand the pain. Didn't you have the strength to bite me just now? Now you're begging me again? Ning Muyun said in a joking tone. I was wrong, really wrong. Please, save me. Ning Yanjun's voice was filled with pain and despair. Ning Muyun stared at her and said in a cold tone, Press your fingerprint on the agreement, and I will consider whether to help you. Ning Yanjun did so immediately and pressed her fingerprint with trembling hands. You pressed it. I said I would consider it, but I didn't promise to treat you. Ning Muyun smiled sarcastically and turned away. You bastard. Ning Yanjun gritted her teeth in anger, but she was powerless to continue arguing and could only continue to struggle in pain. The sixth one. He walked to Ning Shirwei, who was still lying on the ground, without any reaction. Ning Muyun took her hand, wrapped it with a towel, pressed the handprint, and then threw it away casually. The seventh one. Ning Muyun handed the agreement to Ning Luoling. Don't make me wait too long. Put your fingerprints on it. Ning Luoling was trembling all over. The guilt in her heart made her dare not resist, and she could only press the handprints silently. The eighth one. There is only one left. Ning Muyun's gaze fell on Ning Ranran, who was curled up in the quilt. Come out and sign. Ning Ranran shrank even tighter when she heard his words, her voice trembling. I don't want it. Ning Muyun completely lost his patience and pulled back the quilt, revealing the terrified Ning Ranran. He slapped her twice, causing 2 streams of blood to spurt out of her nose, and her eyes were filled with fear. She trembled and pressed her handprint. You deserve a beating. Ning Muyun snorted coldly, sorted out all the agreements, and signed his name. Looking at the 9 blood-red handprints on it, he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his heart. He glanced at the group of Ning family members in front of him, each with a different look, and said in a cold voice, From now on, I will have nothing to do with your Ning family. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, hurried footsteps suddenly came from outside the door, and the door of the ward was suddenly pushed open. Chapter 89. Snap. 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 Shen Yunyan and Shen Wenshan pushed the door open and walked in, followed closely by Bai Yin. The moment the 3 of them walked into the ward, they were all stunned, their eyes wide open, as if they couldn't believe what they saw. Countless $100 bills were scattered around the ward. The floor was covered with scarlet blood, and the air was filled with a mixture of blood and the sour smell of vomit. Ning Tsamu fell not far from the door, with blood oozing from his nose and bloodstains all over his face. Mei Yuanyuan sat by the window, disheveled and swollen from crying. Ning Sija lay on the ground, dying, looking completely different. Everyone in the ward looked like they had experienced a catastrophe. Ning Shuxian curled up in a corner. Ning Yuyin lay unconscious in vomit. Ning Yanjun struggled on the ground in pain. Ning Shirwei's eyes were distracted. Ning Luoling and Ning Ranran covered their faces and cried softly. This scene was like a microcosm of the end of the world, dead silent. What shocked Shin Yunyan the most was Ning Muyun. He stood grimly in the middle of the ward, his hands wrapped in scarlet bandages, still dripping with dirty blood. The look he gave Shin Yunyan was icy cold, without a trace of emotion. "Old Ning, are you okay?" Shin Wenshan was the first to come back to his senses from his shock and hurriedly ran over to help Ning Sangmu up. Shin Yunyan looked at Ning Muyun nervously and asked in disbelief, "Ning Muyun, did you do all this?" Ning Muyun's disgust burst out from his eyes, and he said coldly, "So what if it is? So what if it isn't? What does this have to do with you?" Shin Yunyan's heart was hurt, and she was speechless for a moment. Shin Wenshan supported Ning Sangmu. His face changed, and he pretended to be righteous. "Xiao Ning, how could you do such a thing? It's too outrageous." "Shut up!" Ning Muyun suddenly shouted coldly. Shin Wenshan was shocked. Thinking of Ning Muyun's fierce look at the wedding, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Shin Yunyan was also frightened by his coldness, and the pain in her heart was unbearable. "Ning Muyun, why did you become like this? Is it because of what happened at the wedding?" Ning Muyun sneered, his eyes becoming colder. "Shin Yunyan, we are divorced. What qualifications do you have to ask me?" "What? You are divorced?" Ning Sangmu had just been helped up and had not yet stood firmly when he heard the news. He almost fell back to the ground. Shin Wenshan explained helplessly in a low voice. "Old Ning, they are indeed divorced. It was Yunyan who was ignorant and forced Xiao Ning to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau. They divorced on impulse." Ning Sangmu's mind was buzzing and his thoughts were in a mess. They were divorced? What about the money? Shin Wenshan continued to talk to himself. "So I came here this time to ask for your help and persuade Xiao Ning and Yunyan to remarry. After all, their relationship is not broken down, and divorce is not good for our two families." Ning Sangmu covered his face, regretting deeply. "It's too late. We have already severed ties with him." "What?" Shin Wenshan was stunned. "Aren't you two doing fine? Why did you suddenly break off relations?" Ning Sangmu glared at Ning Muyun angrily and said through gritted teeth, "This rebellious son is too outrageous. We can no longer tolerate it, so we have no choice but to sever ties with him." Shin Wenshan was also shocked after hearing this. "Not only did he divorce Yunyan, he also severed ties with you? Then, what should we do now?" Shin Yunyan was also panicked when she heard this. She thought that even if she divorced impulsively, she could remarry under the coercion of the Ning family. However, now, the Ning family has also severed ties with Ning Muyun, and all her plans have come to nothing. Bai Yin stood aside, looking confused, and interrupted, "Old Ning, old Shin, what are you waiting for? Let Ning Muyun and Yunyan remarry." Shin Wenshan glared at her, then hurried to Ning Muyun and begged, "Xiao Ning, Yunyan divorced you only because of impulse. Look, I slapped her because of this. Now she knows she was wrong. Hurry up and remarry her." Ning Muyun sneered and said in a sarcastic tone, "Shin Wenshan, listen to me. I have divorced Shin Yunyan. Even if you slap her 10 times, 100 times, or even kill her, it has nothing to do with me." When Shin Yunyan heard this, she suddenly looked up and looked at Ning Muyun in shock, as if she didn't know him. The man who had always obeyed her in everything actually said such cruel words. "Rebellious son, if you don't remarry, I will not be polite to you." Ning Sangmu also rushed forward and threatened angrily. Ning Muyun sneered. "Ning Sangmu, have you forgotten the beating you just received?" Ning Sangmu's face turned red, and he said stubbornly, "I don't care. You must remarry now." Shin Yunyan was also anxious and rushed to Ning Muyun, crying, "Ning Muyun, I know I was wrong. I will be a good wife in the future. Please remarry me." Pa! 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 3 crisp applause rang out in the ward, breaking everyone's silence. Chapter 90. Ning Sangmu, I'm here to settle accounts with you. Ah! 3 shrill screams rang out at the same time. Bai Yin stood behind, staring at the scene in amazement, completely unable to believe what she was seeing. "You little bastard! How dare you hit my daughter?" She was about to rush forward, but was interrupted by Ning Muyun's cold shout. "Shut up!" Ning Muyun's voice was as chilling as a chill wind, shocking her into being speechless for a moment. Shin Xuani outside the door was stunned and murmured in a low voice, "He actually beat up my dad and my sister. So awesome." Then he sighed, "Oh, when can I be so tough?" Ning Sangmu covered his swollen face, his eyes blazing with anger, and roared, "Rebellious son! How dare you hit your father again? Get lost! Ning Muyun stared at him coldly, his voice extremely cold. Ning Sangmu, I have severed ties with you. If you dare to say that I am your son again, be careful, or I will make you even happier. Ning Sangmu was so angry that his face turned red and his neck became thick, but under Ning Muyun's cold threat, he could only grit his teeth and endure it. But when he turned around and saw Shun Yunyan's dazed look, he immediately remembered his purpose. Ning Muyun, you must remarry Yunyan immediately, Ning Sangmu said angrily. You are divorced, and you will never find a better woman than her. Listen to me and remarry quickly. Shin Wenshan didn't care about the wound on his face and quickly agreed. Yes, Xiaoning, Yunyan really likes you. She was just impulsive. Don't worry, I will definitely teach her a lesson this time. She will definitely be a good wife in the future. Ning Muyun sneered, his eyes full of disgust. Remarry? Remarry that bitch Shin Yunyan? Are you dreaming? I know what kind of person Shin Yunyan is better than you. His words pierced Shin Yunyan's heart like a knife. Her face was filled with pain, and she asked tremblingly, Ning Muyun, why do you say that to me? Didn't you love me very much before? Why did you become like this? Because of you. Ning Muyun spat out a few words coldly. Shin Yunyan was stunned. Because me? Ning Muyun's eyes flashed with deep hatred. He slowly squatted down and approached her. His voice was full of coldness and sarcasm. Yes, it's because of you. Shin Yunyan, I used to like you and loved you with all my heart. When Grandpa arranged our marriage, you were extremely reluctant. I thought I could use love to change you and make you smile, but you only brought me indifference and hurt. Shin Yunyan's face became paler and paler, and her body began to tremble uncontrollably. You have never smiled at me in the past 8 years. You threw the breakfast I made for you into the trash. At the coming-of-age ceremony, you abandoned me for Wu Minghui, causing me to lose face in front of everyone. You also testified for that scumbag, causing me to be put in the detention center. And he tried to harm you many times. I tried my best to protect you, but you ran away from the wedding in public, just to say goodbye to that scumbag. Every word Ning Muyun said pierced Shin Yunyan's heart like a knife. She trembled all over and wanted to defend Wu Minghui. Ning Muyun, listen to me. Minghui is not. Shut up. Ning Muyun slapped her in the face. Shin Yunyan screamed, fell to the ground, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. She staggered to her feet and stared at Ning Muyun blankly, tears mixed with blood sliding down her cheeks. The man who once loved her deeply had completely turned into a strange demon in her eyes. Just then, brisk and steady footsteps were heard outside the room. A middle-aged man in a neat suit walked in with a briefcase in his hand. When Ning Sangmu saw him, his face turned pale and his eyes were full of panic. Zhao Zheng, why are you here? Ning Sangmu asked nervously. The visitor was the lawyer Zhao Zheng. He had a calm expression and was not at all moved by the chaos in the ward. But when his eyes fell on Ning Sangmu, a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Ning Sangmu, I'm here to settle accounts with you, Zhao Zheng said coldly, with an unignorable chill in his voice. Chapter 91 Uncle Zhao, how much money is in that fund? Settlement of accounts? Ning Sangmu quickly hid his panic in his eyes and angrily shouted, Zhao Zheng, who do you think you are? Why do you come to me to settle accounts? Ning Sangmu. Zhao Zheng snorted coldly, stared at Ning Sangmu, and asked, what did Uncle Ning say to you before he died? He is lying on the hospital bed, and he repeatedly asked you to take good care of Mu Yun. Ning Sangmu's eyes became panicked again. Zhao Zheng went a step further and angrily shouted, but how did you do it? Ning Sangmu's face turned pale, but he could not say anything else. Zhao Zheng's eyes were filled with anger. Now you still have the nerve to ask me what I am? Ning Sangmu, Uncle Ning has a son like you. It's such a misfortune for him. You. Ning Sangmu was furious, but facing Zhao Zheng's stern gaze, he didn't say anything. Snort. Zhao Zheng snorted coldly, then looked at Ning Muyun and asked coldly, Young master, didn't I tell you to cut off your relationship with them and come to call me? Ning Muyun's eyes darkened, and he solemnly apologized to Zhao Zheng. I'm sorry, Uncle Zhao. Zhao Zheng looked at Ning Muyun deeply and finally sighed softly. It's okay. I'm here now. Young master, have you severed your relationship with them? Ning Muyun walked up to Zhao Zheng with the two parties agreement and said, Uncle Zhao, I signed 2 severance agreements with them. Zhao Zheng looked at the 9 bright red fingerprints on the agreement, then looked at the mess in the room and smiled helplessly. Young master, you really didn't disappoint Uncle Ning and me. Ning Muyun didn't understand what Zhao Zheng meant and was about to ask for details, but Zhao Zheng continued to lower his head and read the agreement. When he saw the clause in the agreement that required Ning Muyun to give up his inheritance rights to all Ning family assets, Zhao Zheng frowned and looked at Ning Tsangmu with confusion in his eyes. How did he know that Uncle Ning left a fortune for the young master? Ning Muyun saw Zhao Zheng's puzzled look and asked in a low voice, "Uncle Zhao, is there any problem with this agreement?" "No." Zhao Zheng put the agreement in Ning Muyun's hand and said, "Just sign it. Even if you sign this agreement with them, many things will not change." Ning Tsangmu was shocked and said quickly, "Zhao Zheng, what do you mean?" Zhao Zheng stared at Ning Tsangmu with eyes as cold as an eagle. "Ning Tsangmu, I don't care where you heard this rumor from. Even if you try your best to get the young master to sign this agreement, you can't change the established facts." The more Ning Muyun listened, the more confused he became. "Uncle Zhao, what are you talking about?" Zhao Zheng patted Ning Muyun's shoulder gently and said gently, "Young master, Uncle Zhao came here today to tell you in detail about the things that Uncle Ning left for you." "Grandfather?" Thinking of that kind-hearted old man, Ning Muyun felt a warm feeling in his heart. "Uncle Zhao, does Grandpa have any last words for you to tell me?" Zhao Zheng shook his head with relief. "It's not a will, but the fortune that Uncle Ning left you. Property." Hearing this, Ning Tsangmu and Shun Wenshan's faces all changed, and they thought to themselves that something was wrong. Ning Muyun became more and more confused. "Uncle Zhao, when did Grandpa leave me a fortune?" Zhao Zheng was also stunned for a moment. "Young master, even if you don't know how much money the property has, you should know that there is such a property. Why don't you know anything?" "Uncle Zhao, how should I know?" Ning Muyun was also confused. "No one told me." Zhao Zheng looked at Shun Yunyan in confusion. "Yunyan said she told you early in the morning. Why didn't she tell you?" When Shun Yunyan heard this, her face turned pale, her body began to tremble violently, and her eyes became uncontrollably panicked. When Ning Muyun saw Shun Yunyan's eyes, his heart sank. It seemed that everything Zhao Zheng said was true. Shun Yunyan was indeed hiding something from me. Thinking of the incomprehensible mysteries of his previous life, Ning Muyun suddenly felt cold all over. Seeing Ning Muyun's bad complexion, Zhao Zheng quickly asked, "Young master, what's wrong with you?" "Fine." Ning Muyun had a gloomy face and glared at Shun Yunyan fiercely. "Uncle Zhao, I don't know anything. Please help me explain it." Zhao Zheng looked at Shun Yunyan deeply and took in her panic. "I suddenly understood a lot of things." Zhao Zheng sighed inaudibly, and then began to tell an old story in front of everyone in the ward. "Young master, that happened after Uncle Ning and Uncle Shin arranged a marriage for you and Yunyan. One day, Uncle Ning and Uncle Shin called me over in a hurry. I just walked into the garden and saw that they both had gloomy faces. Before I had the chance to ask, Uncle Ning and Uncle Shun asked me to draft a will." "Well?" Ning Muyun asked in surprise. "Uncle Zhao, how many years ago was that?" "Young master, that was 5 years ago. Uncle Ning had just celebrated his 70th birthday." Ning Muyun's eyes were full of confusion. "Uncle Zhao, Grandpa was still in good health at that time. Why would he think of making a will?" "Yes." Zhao Zheng glanced coldly at Ning Tsangmu and Shun Wenshan and said in a meaningful tone, "Why did Uncle Ning and Uncle Shin make a will at that time?" Ning Tsangmu blushed and lowered his head in shame. Shun Wenshan's face also looked unhappy, and his eyes were full of unwillingness. Zhao Zheng noticed the changes in Ning Tsangmu and Shun Wenshan, snorted coldly, and continued his story. "I also advised them not to do this, but Uncle Ning and Uncle Shun were very determined, so I had no choice but to follow their advice and make a will." Zhao Zheng paused and looked at Ning Muyun kindly. "Young master, Uncle Ning and Uncle Shun have set up a fund for you and Yunyan. Only you and Yunyan can use this fund. Except for you and Yunyan, no one from the Ning and Shin families can use that fund. But there is a condition for using that fund." Ning Muyun felt that he had touched upon the crux of the matter. "Uncle Zhao, what are the conditions?" Zhao Zheng glanced at Shin Yunyan, whose eyes were evasive, and continued. "This fund can only be used after you and Yunyan are officially married." Ning Muyun understood a lot of things in an instant. No wonder Shin Wenshan and Bai looked down on me so much, but refused to let Shin Yunyan divorce me. No wonder these two old guys, Ning Tsangmu and Shin Wenshan, have always wanted to remarry Shin Yunyan. No wonder Shin Yunyan has always hated herself. but never divorced herself. It turns out the root of everything is here. Ning Muyin was immediately furious. Shin Yunyan's face was already as pale as paper. When he saw the deep hatred in Ning Muyun's eyes, his body was shaking like a sieve. Ning Muyun slowly turned around, looked at Zhao Zheng, and asked coldly, "Uncle Zhao, how much money is in that fund?" Zhao Zheng answered with an extremely serious expression. "Young master, that fund is a full 13 billion. Chapter 92. Even if the young master beats you to death, I will defend him." 13 billion? Ning Muyin was completely dumbfounded. He never imagined that his grandfather would leave him such a huge fortune. The huge amount of money was like a bolt of lightning that completely dispelled the fog in Ning Muyun's heart that had been in confusion for many years. Suddenly, many mysteries from the past life were answered the moment he learned about the 13 billion. Not long after I married Shin Yunyan in my previous life, the stock prices of Shun's and Ning's companies began to rise steadily without any warning. The price limit was reached many times. The total assets of Shun Group are around 10 billion. But after that stock price surge, the market value of Shun Group directly reached 15 billion. The market value has doubled by half. The Ning Group was no exception. The company, which originally had a market value of just over 20 billion, now had a market value of 30 billion after that stock price surge. Behind all this is an anonymous investor. It used huge amounts of funds to continuously purchase stocks of Ning and Shin companies, attracting the attention of many investors and ultimately allowing the two companies to achieve the miracle of repeated daily limit increases. Afterwards, the Shun and Ning companies encountered many crises, but they were all overcome with the help of the mysterious investor. Originally, Ning Muyin had thanked the mysterious man in his heart, thank him for his unremitting efforts in helping the Ning and Shin families. But now, Ning Muyin understood everything. The mysterious investor turned out to be Shun Yunyan. She withdrew all the funds from the fund set up by the two elders without telling anyone. And I was like a fool, being kept in the dark by them. The moment he learned the truth, Ning Muyun's hatred towards Shun Yunyan and the Ning and Shun families reached its peak. Shun Yunyan also noticed the deep hatred in Ning Muyun's eyes that could not be concealed at all. Her whole body was shaking violently, and her eyes were full of guilt. Ning Tsangmu stared at Zhao Zheng angrily, his eyes full of unwillingness. Shin Wenshan's face changed drastically, and he became visibly panicked. Ning Muyin glared at Shun Yunyan fiercely, took a few deep breaths, and tried to calm his tone. "Uncle Zhao, I have divorced her. What should I do with the property now?" Shun Yunyan didn't expect that Ning Muyin was unwilling to even say his name. While her heart ached, her eyes were fixed on Zhao Zheng. That money is really important. There was really no way she could ignore that money. Ning Tsangmu and Shun Wenshan also perked up. They are also very concerned about the ownership of the property. Zhao Zheng ignored the two of them. He looked at Ning Muyin and sighed softly. "Young master, Uncle Ning and Uncle Shin really hope that you and Yunyan can live happily ever after. But they also considered the worst-case scenario. That means you and Yunyan divorce. Now the worst outcome has become a reality. I have no choice but to divide the fund between you and Yunyan according to their wishes." "Split the fund?" Ning Tsangmu and Shun Wenshan exclaimed at the same time. When they heard the word divide, they immediately perked up. Even Shun Yunyan, who was standing aside and feeling sad, opened her eyes wide because she had never heard of this matter before. Ning Muyin took in the gazes of the three men, and anger surged in his heart. "Uncle Zhao, how do we divide the fund?" Zhao Zheng glanced at Shun Yunyan with disappointment, then reluctantly withdrew his gaze and explained with a serious face. "Young master, this fund was jointly funded by Uncle Ning and Uncle Shun. Uncle Ning invested 10 billion, plus 15% of the shares of Ning Group. Uncle Shun invested 3 billion, plus 30% of the shares of Shun Group. These two parts combined together constitute this fund." When they heard that the shares of Ning Group and Shun Group were also involved, Ning Tsangmu and Shun Wenshan were stunned. Why has Shin Yunyan never talked about these things before? Shin Yunyan was also very shocked. She originally thought that there was only a large amount of cash in the fund, but I didn't expect that there were shares of Shun Group and Ning Group in it. Both companies are big enterprises. Judging from the market value alone, the shares of the two companies in the fund are worth a full 6 billion. Plus the original 13 billion. That's 19 billion. With such a huge amount of wealth, this fund is equivalent to another Ning group. When Shin Yunyin thought about the current debt of the Shin group, she once again felt very regretful for her impulsive divorce. Zhao Zheng looked at the shocked crowd and explained again. Uncle Ning and Uncle Shin left a will. If you two don't end up together, then the 10 billion from Uncle Ning's fortune plus 15% of the Ning Group shares in this fund will be inherited by you, young master, and the 3 billion plus 30% of the shares of Shin Group from Uncle Shin's property will be inherited by Yunyan. These two sums of money can only be used by you two heirs. Other members of the Ning and Shin families are still not qualified to use it. After hearing Zhao Zheng's explanation, Shin Wenshan's face changed drastically. This is bad. The company has a huge hole. Even if Yunyan could get 3 billion in assets, she would not be able to fill those gaps. Ning Samu was even more furious. He didn't expect that not only Ning Muyun's 10 billion was gone, even part of his own property would be taken away by Ning Muyun. Ning Sangmu, who was extremely angry, suddenly remembered the agreement signed by Ning Muyun. His eyes lit up, and he quickly ran to Zhao Zheng and angrily scolded him. Zhao Zheng, this rebellious son has given up the right to inherit all the Ning family's property. Those 10 billion should be mine. Ning Muyun looked at Ning Sangmu angrily, and suddenly remembered that he had indeed signed the severance agreement. He said to Zhao Zheng with an apologetic look, I'm sorry, Uncle Zhao, I have already signed the agreement. Faced with Ning Sangmu's aggressive attitude and Ning Muyun's apologetic look, Zhao Zheng remained unusually calm. Young master, it doesn't matter. Even if you give up your inheritance rights to all the property, the money is still yours. Why? Ning Sangmu was dumbfounded. This rebellious son has already given up his inheritance rights. How could the money be his? Zhao Zheng looked at Ning Sangmu with a sneer, his tone full of sarcasm. Ning Sangmu, Uncle Ning had anticipated that you would play this trick on the young master. Uncle Ning has told me from the beginning that even if the young master gives up the right to inherit the property in the future, the property will only belong to him. Only he is qualified to use that money, Ning Sangmu said angrily. Zhao Zheng, this rebellious son has beaten my whole family into this state. He has no right to inherit at all. Zhao Zheng sneered, looked at Ning Sangmu and said, Uncle Ning also anticipated this. He told me that no matter what the young master did to you, he is the only one qualified to inherit the assets. Uncle Ning even asked me to defend the young master, even if he beat you to death. Impossible. Impossible. Ning Samu was in great shock. My father would never say that. Zhao Zheng sneered. Ning Sangmu, if you don't believe me, let's listen to Uncle Ning's last words. Chapter 93, The Police Are Coming. What? Ning Sangmu's eyes widened in surprise. I was always by my father's bedside before he died. How come I didn't hear his last words? Anger was faintly evident in Zhao Zheng's eyes. Ning Sangmu, you still have the nerve to say that you have always been by Uncle Ning's bedside. Aren't you afraid of retribution? You. Ning Sangmu glared at Zhao Zheng, but he was clearly lacking in confidence and seemed a little guilty. Snort. Zhao Zheng snorted coldly and ignored Ning Sangmu. He slowly opened his briefcase, took out a recorder from it, and stared at Ning Sangmu coldly. Ning Sangmu, listen carefully. This is what Uncle Ning told me before he died. Ning Sangmu's face froze, and he stared at the recorder, not daring to be distracted at all. Ning Muyun also focused all his attention on the recorder. That kind old man was one of the few people in the Ning family who was truly kind to Ning Muyun. Ning Muyun was still very excited to hear the old man's voice again. But Shin Yunyan didn't think so. The old man has always been very good to me, but I have failed to live up to his expectations. Shin Yunyan only felt a wave of panic in her heart, and a chill suddenly penetrated her whole body, making her hair stand on end. Zhao Zheng looked at the recorder with nostalgia, then pressed the play button. Uncle Ning, don't be impatient. Speak slowly. I'll record it right away. Zhao Zheng's choked voice came out from the recorder. Cough, cough. Zhao Zheng, cough, cough. I'm dying. Well, but I'm still worried about Muyun. Ning Muyun's eyes turned red and filled with tears in an instant. Even before his death, my grandfather was still thinking about himself. Uncle Ning, please let me take care of Xiaoyan. I will definitely take good care of him. It's not just this, I'm worried about other things. Uncle Ning, just say it. As long as you say it, I will do it even if it costs my life. Ahem. Xiaozheng, I'm relieved about you. My son is a fool. He has always liked to be clever since he was young, but unfortunately his cleverness backfired. Uncle Ning, are you asking me to keep an eye on Ning Songmu? When Ning Songmu heard this, he glared at Zhao Zheng fiercely and felt even more indignant. He founded the Ning Group himself. The market value is as high as 20 billion. Such a big company, such a big achievement. Why can't my father praise me for once? Why do you keep belittling yourself like this? Why do you trust Zhao Zheng, an outsider? No, it's useless to keep an eye on that idiot. Sooner or later he will meet with disaster. What I'm worried about is my poor grandson. Uncle Ning, what do you mean? Xiaozheng, my grandson has suffered so much since he was young. He finally came home. His parents are still the same. When Mei Yuanyuan heard this, she started crying out of guilt. Dad, I'm sorry. Whoa. Zhao Zheng looked at Mei Yuanyuan coldly and said nothing. Xiao Zheng, Xiao Yun's sisters and his parents have always been mean to him. The whole family has been blinded by that bastard. I'm afraid they will harm my grandson. When Ning Jibwa heard this, his eyes were filled with resentment. Damn old thing. If it weren't for him, Ning Muyun, that bastard, would have been tortured to death by those sisters. If it weren't for him, I'm afraid the Ning family's property would have been mine long ago. Damn old thing. Everyone who was awake in the ward was concentrating on the recording, so no one noticed Ning Jibwa's resentful look. Uncle Ning, don't worry. I will never let them harm Xiaoyan. If anything happens to Xiaoyan, I will definitely make them pay the price. It's not just these things. That idiot has bad intentions. I'm afraid he will secretly try to seize the property I gave to Mu Yun. Xiaozheng, you have to remember, regardless of whether Mu Yun has the right to inherit the Ning family's property, you can only let Mu Yun use that money. Uncle Ning, I'll remember it. Also, if one day Mu Yun falls out with them, no matter what Mu Yun did to them, you must stand by his side without hesitation. Help him. Uncle Ning, I understand. I will definitely help Xiaoyan at all costs. Ahem, my grandson is so pitiful. Xiaozheng, you must protect him if anything happens to him. I will die with my eyes wide open. Uncle Ning, I'll remember it. I will definitely remember it. I'll feel relieved if you can remember it. Ah, Uncle Ning, Uncle Ning. As Zhao Zheng's heart-wrenching cries rang out, the recording officially came to an end. Ning Muyun was already moved to tears. Mei Yuanyun even knelt on the ground, crying bitterly with a look of guilt on her face. After putting away the recorder, Zhao Zheng's eyes turned red. Ning Songmu, you heard it now. Ning Songmu looked at Zhao Zheng angrily, his heart filled with resentment towards his father. Why? Why does he always look at me like this? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? The anger in his heart made Ning Songmu lose his mind. Zhao Zheng, I don't believe it. I don't believe your recording. Your recording is fake. Zhao Zheng's cold eyes were devoid of any emotion. Ning Songmu, it doesn't matter whether you want to believe it or not. I will only distribute the property according to Uncle Ning's last wishes. Don't even think you can get a penny from me. If you're not convinced, you can sue me in court. Ning Songmu was furious, but facing Zhao Zheng, he really had no way to deal with it. He knew very well Zhao Zheng's abilities as a great lawyer. Just when Ning Songmu and Zhao Zheng were in a stalemate, Shen Wenchan quickly ran to Shen Yunyan and began to whisper instructions. Yunyan, you know the company's situation. The money your grandfather left you is not enough. Dad knows you're in trouble, but no matter what, you must remarry Ning Muyun. Otherwise, our Shen family will be finished. Shen Yunyan is also very regretful now. The guilt in his heart made him almost breathless. She was just about to ask Ning Muyun for help. Two familiar figures suddenly walked into the ward. When Ning Songmu saw those two people, he was completely stunned. Mr. Ning, we meet again. The two policemen who went to the villa that day appeared in the ward again. The two policemen looked around, and their faces turned serious. Mr. Ning, I'm afraid you can't protect your son anymore today, right? The police are here. Chapter 94 Ning Muyun, please come with us. Ning Songmu didn't expect that the policeman he was most afraid of seeing would appear again. Ever since Ning Songmu found out that Ning Muyun had evidence against him, he never thought of calling the police again. Even though Ning Muyun had just done those things in the ward, Ning Songmu never thought of calling the police. But as luck would have it, these policemen showed up again. Our family is in the quietest VLP ward in the hospital. There aren't many people on the entire floor. Why would anyone call the police? Ning Songmu was about to explode with anger when he thought about the consequences if Ling Xiaodong's affair was exposed to the police. Which bastard who gave birth to a son without an asshole called the police? P.S. A few years later, Shun Xuani's posthumous child was born without an asshole. Mei Yuanyuan looked at the policeman at the door and suddenly felt worried. This is the first time that Mei Yuanyuan has felt worried about Ning Muyun since he returned to the Ning family. But others are not like that. Bai Yin, who had just been slapped by Ning Muyun, was filled with anger and was worried that she had no chance to take revenge on Ning Muyun. When I saw two policemen suddenly appear outside the door, I was suddenly delighted. Bai Yin pointed at Ning Muyun angrily and started shouting at the top of her lungs. "Police comrades! This little beast hit someone. Arrest him quickly. No, my son. No. Shut up." Before Mei Yuanyuan and Shin Yunyan could finish their conversation, Shin Wenshan jumped out. Bai Yin was startled, but the pain on her face made her angry again. "Why should I shut up? That little bastard hit me. I'll make him go to jail." Bang! The other half of Bai Yan's face also became swollen. "I told you to shut up. Don't you understand?" Shin Wenshan's cold eyes made Bai Yin feel both scared and aggrieved. "Shin Wenshan, you actually hit me. I won't live any longer." Bai Yin just lay on the ground and started rolling around. Shin Wenshan suppressed his anger and whispered, "Bai Yin, keep making trouble. Ah, if you keep making trouble, our whole family will have to sleep on the street." Ah! The crying stopped abruptly, and Bai Yin finally remembered the important matter. She glared at Ning Muyun angrily, but in the end she could only endure the anger. She would rather die than give up her current comfortable life. Bai Yin stared at Ning Muyun intently, thinking to herself, "You little bastard. Just wait. After you remarry Yunyan, I'll show you how I'll deal with you." Shin Wenshan breathed a sigh of relief, and he quickly gave Ning Tsangmu a look. Let him drive the police away as soon as possible. Ning Tsangmu took a few deep breaths and finally suppressed the anger in his heart. He looked at the two policemen and asked in a calm tone, "Comrades, nothing has happened here. Please go back." Old Zhang looked at Ning Tsangmu with a serious face. "Mr. Ning, someone called the police today. This is a serious matter. You can't fool us with just a few words." Ning Tsangmu felt a dull headache from being so angry. "Then I want to ask, who called the police?" When Shin Xuani saw the police arriving, he finally jumped out from behind the door. "Uncle Ning, I was the one who called the police." The moment Ning Tsangmu saw Shin Xuani, he was so angry that his whole body was shaking and his blood pressure was about to explode. "Xiaoi, why did you call the police?" Shin Xuani said sternly. "Uncle Ning, I saw everything Ning Muyin did to you outside the ward. I just couldn't stand it anymore. That's why I called the police." Ning Tsangmu was so angry that his hands were shaking. Before he could say anything, Shin Wenshan got angry first. Bang! Shin Wenshan came up and slapped Shin Xuani. "You bastard! Who told you to call the police?" Before Shin Xuani could scream, Shin Wenshan grabbed his ear and pulled him in front of him, shouting in a low voice, "Idiot! The most important thing now is to get your sister and Ning Muyin back together. If you call the police now, what if the police put Ning Muyin in jail? What should we do then?" "Ah!" Shin Xuani covered his face and said pitifully, "Dad, why do you insist that my sister remarry him? Didn't Grandpa leave 3 billion for my sister? Isn't that enough?" "Big eater." Shin Wenshan slapped Shin Xuani again. "Our company owes the bank a total of 4 billion in loans. The 3 billion your grandfather left for your sister is not enough." "You idiot." "Ah!" Shin Xuani was also dumbfounded. He muttered in a wronged and dissatisfied voice, "I didn't know the company owed the bank so much money. Besides, you didn't tell me. You little bastard. How dare you talk back to me? I'll beat you to death." Shin Wenshan was so angry that he slapped Shin Xuani again. Shin Xuani didn't dare to say anything more and just looked at Shin Wenshan aggrievedly. "I don't care what you do. You must not let the police take Ning Muyun away. If your sister and he can't remarry, I'll show you how I'll deal with you." "I know, Dad." Shin Xuani covered his face and looked at the two policemen at the door with grievance. "Comrade police, what I just said on the phone was nonsense. Ning Muyun has never hit anyone." The two policemen stood at the door with their mouths twitching. "What happened to these two? Do you think we are idiots? The Ning family played this trick on us yesterday in the villa. Do you want to play the same trick on us today? Don't go too far." Old Zhang took the young policeman into the ward. There were countless $100 bills and pools of nosebleeds scattered on the floor. Several women were lying on the ground unconscious. What's more, It looked like the mother and daughter were crying at the same time, and their faces were bruised and swollen. There are also bloodstains on Mr. Ning's face. The situation today is even worse than yesterday. Old Zhang looked at Ning Muyun with confusion in his heart. Why is such a well-mannered young man so violent? Ning Muyun's face was unusually calm. Zhao Zheng stood even more firmly behind Ning Muyun. No matter what happens, he will not hesitate to use all his strength to help Ning Muyun. When Shen Yunyan saw this scene, she suddenly felt panicked. Oh no, Ning Muyun will definitely be thrown into jail. Be sure to stop the police. Old Zhang looked at Ning Muyun deeply and asked seriously, "You are Ning Muyun?" "That's right." Ning Muyun's expression did not change at all. "I am Ning Muyun." Lao Zhang found it very interesting. This young man didn't look like an irrational person. But why would he do such a thing? "Ning Muyun, someone called the police and reported that you beat someone up. Now you are suspected of intentional injury. We would like to ask you to come with us." "Not good." Ning Tsangmu, Shin Wenshan, and Shin Yunyan had the same thought at the same time. We must not let the police take Ning Muyun away. Just as the three were about to speak up to stop him, they heard Ning Muyun's calm answer. "No problem. Let's go." "What?" Chapter 95, Yao Yunjing. You are crazy. The three of them never imagined that Ning Muyun would agree to go to the police station without hesitation. Ning Samu had a bad feeling that something was going to happen and quickly stepped forward to stop the police. Police comrade, this rebel. He really didn't hit anyone. You can't just take him to the police station like that." "Yes." Shin Wenshan was also anxious. He also has to find a way to get Ning Muyun and Shin Yunyan to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to remarry. How can we let the police take people away like this? "Police comrade, you can't wrongly accuse a good man. My son-in-law did nothing. Why did you take him to the police station?" As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Yin and Shin Shuani, whose cheeks were swollen, glanced at Shin Wenshan at the same time, feeling very uncomfortable. This ward is almost turning Ning Muyun into a fight club. And you still say you haven't done anything? Although the two of them kept slandering Shun Wenshan's words in their hearts. But for the future of the Shin family, the two of them kept their mouths shut and stayed where they were indignantly. Ning Tsangmu and Shun Wenshan's eager performance made Lao Zhang deeply moved. This guy is so lucky. Yesterday, it was his father who tried desperately to cover up the incident, fearing that he would be put in jail. Another father-in-law popped up today, and he was willing to beat his wife to protect her. This is such a blessing. Why don't I have this kind of blessing? But it's no use being lucky. Director Yao gave a strict order that this time the young man must be brought back. What if I haven't brought it back this time? Lao Zhang couldn't even imagine how blessed he was. Director Yao's methods are no joke. Those who offended her never had a good ending. After making up his mind, Lao Zhang's face became serious again. "You two, I know you both love your son and son-in-law very much, but you two can't bend the law for personal gain. The law has its own majesty. Without rules, there will be no order. We police officers cannot turn a blind eye to such vicious injury incidents. We will not wrongly accuse a good person, nor will we let a bad person go. So, we must take this Ning Muyun back to the police station for investigation. If he hasn't done anything illegal, we definitely won't make things difficult for him. Please rest assured." Ning Tsangmu was almost angry to death. He doesn't even know whether that rebellious son has violated the law or not. But when it comes to my own things, 2 peanuts are indispensable. Ning Tsangmu was afraid that Ning Muyun would go to the police station and expose the truth. Shin Wenshan was also anxious, just looking at the current appearance of Ning Muyun and other sisters in the ward. That's definitely a crime of intentional injury. Ning Muyun will definitely not be able to get out once he enters the police station. How could I remarry Yunyan at that time? How can the Shin family survive this crisis? Shin Yunyan also became anxious. The scene in the ward and Ning Muyun's slap made her terrified. But the crisis of Shin Group made her unable to sleep at night. More importantly, Shin Yunyan is now filled with guilt towards Ning Muyun. She regretted very much hiding the matter of Ning Muyun's property. Just now, when Zhao Zheng was explaining those properties, Shin Yunyan felt like her heart was being torn into pieces. She questioned herself more than once. Why do you do those crazy things? She couldn't face the darkness deep in her heart and could only cover it up with her guilt towards Ning Muyun. Whether it is the guilt towards Ning Muyun or the crisis of Shin Group, Shin Yunyan must not let Ning Muyun be taken away by the police like this under any circumstances. Police comrade, this is all a misunderstanding. My husband. Shut up. The sudden roar startled Shin Yunyan. Shin Yunyan looked back and saw a pair of cold eyes. The coldness in Ning Muyun's eyes made Shin Yunyan feel like she had fallen into an ice cave, freezing cold. Shin Yunyan, you and I are divorced? We have no relationship anymore. Don't let me hear you say, I am your husband again. I feel sick when I hear it. Shin Yunyan felt very aggrieved. She was trying to help him, so why was he so ungrateful? Ning Muyun, Ning Muyun never wanted to see Shin Yunyan again. He walked past Shin Yunyan and went straight to Lao Zhang, saying calmly, Police comrade, I will go back with you for investigation. Let's go now. Old Zhang glanced at Shin Yunyan, then at Ning Muyun, and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Why is there such a big gap between people? Look at that person's wife. Even after divorce, she still defends her husband. Think again about the tigress in your own family. Well, old Zhang sighed silently, wiped away the distracting thoughts in his mind, and returned to a serious state. Thank you for your cooperation. Let's go. Seeing Ning Muyun was about to leave, the three of them secretly thought that something was wrong. Before the three of them could react, Ning Muyun had already walked out of the ward with the police. Don't leave! Ning Samu quickly ran to the police and said, I don't care what you say. You're not allowed to take him away. Yes. Shin Wenshan and Shin Yunyan also hurriedly ran to the police and stopped Lao Zhang. Comrade police officer, you really can't take him away. Old Zhang was also a little angry. You too. You are now obstructing official business. Please get out of the way, or I will arrest you for obstructing official business. No, get out of the way. Ning Muyun pushed the three people aside and walked out of the ward. The police at the door was very surprised to see this scene. Old Zhang also looked at Ning Muyun in surprise. He didn't expect this young man to be so cooperative. He glanced at the three of them, shook his head, and then he and his companions took Ning Muyun out of the ward. Zhao Zheng followed closely behind with a briefcase. Ning Tsangmu stared at Ning Muyun's receding back unwillingly. He didn't expect that after so much effort, Ning Muyun and the police still went to the police station. Shin Wenshan was also panicking. Lao Ning, what should we do next? Ning Tsangmu's eyes flashed with a fierce light. Let's go to the police station too. Let's see what this rebellious son has to say. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Tsangmu and Shin Wenshan followed Ning Muyun out of the ward. Shin Yunyan followed closely behind. The only people left in the ward were Bai Yan and her son, who looked dazed, and Mei Yuan and her daughter, who were crying. Police station. Ning Muyun just walked into the hall following two policemen. Before I could stand still, I heard a cold voice coming from the side. Ning Muyun, you're finally here. Before he could react, Ning Muyun saw a dark shadow coming towards him. It was a pair of black patent leather high-heeled shoes with a red sole, and the sharp black heel was 10 centimeters long, coming straight towards Ning Muyun's face. Ning Muyun subconsciously stretched out his hand to block it, but the red sole hit his arm, causing it to hurt. At the moment of stalemate, Ning Muyun finally saw the red figure. Yao Yunjing, you are crazy. Top tip son alta Ning Muyun. I've waited for you for 11 years. Ning Muyun, I haven't seen you for so many years. How come you have become so weak? Looking at the pretty red-haired figure in front of him, Ning Muyun did not dare to neglect her at all. Yao Yunjing, I don't have time to fight you now. Get out of my way. Ning Muyun took a sudden step forward and used all his strength to push the red sole on his arm outwards. The high heels drew a graceful arc. Yao Yunjing stepped back and punched Ning Muyun again. Drink! Before Ning Muyun had time to catch his breath, Yao Yunjing's fist came towards him again. Ning Muyun didn't dare to underestimate this former little bully and quickly stretched out his hands and crossed them to block the man's heavy punch. The fist was very white and tender, but the power was surprisingly great. It hit Ning Muyun's arm and made his hands numb. Ning Muyun, I've been looking for you all these years. What do you want from me? A dangerous smile appeared on Yao Yunjing's cold face. Ever since I was defeated by you, I've been honing my skills in these years. I was planning to fight you again on your 16th birthday, but you left the orphanage straight away. Ning Muyun, Yao Yunjing shouted loudly and punched out again. 11 years. I've been waiting for you for 11 years. Today, I finally caught you again. Ning Muyun endured the severe pain and blocked Yao Yunjing's punch again. Looking at this crazy figure, Ning Muyun sighed helplessly. This little bully is still the same as before, so unreasonable. Yao Yunjing, what on earth are you going to do? A hint of excitement and danger flashed in Yao Yunjing's eyes. Ning Muyun, let's fight again. You defeated me 11 years ago. Today, I must avenge my previous shame. Ning Muyun was so angry when he saw this former little bully. Before coming to the police station, Ning Muyun had been thinking about those properties. But who could have thought that I would meet such a guy as soon as I arrived at the police station? Yao Yunjing, you are taking advantage of me. Can't you see that I'm injured? Injured? Yao Yunjing's face changed, and he retracted his fist cleanly and neatly. Where are you hurt? Ning Muyun finally got a chance to catch his breath. He was breathing heavily. My arms and hands were in excruciating pain and couldn't stop shaking. He didn't expect that his hands, which had just displayed such great power in the ward, couldn't even withstand 2 punches from Yao Yunjing. Ning Muyun sighed silently. This little bully was becoming more and more powerful. He slowly raised his head and looked at the cold and elegant figure, as if he had returned to the past. The deep red hip-length hair was like silk, flowing smoothly under the influence of gravity. On her oval face with soft lines, pale pink lips, a straight nose, and a pair of cold eyes under her elegant and slender eyebrows. The lavender pupils add a touch of coolness to the beauty. A solemn and majestic police badge is pinned on the bulging white shirt. The black satin hip skirt highlights the beauty's proud figure. Under the long legs wrapped in black stockings are a pair of 3-inch-high black patent leather high heels. In addition, the beauty is wearing a cool windbreaker on her back and a pair of dark blue sunglasses on her red hair. This outfit makes the beauty's aura fully open. Her 1.80-meter tall height makes her look as tall as 2.80 meters with this outfit. Looking at the cool and beautiful figure in front of him, Ning Muyun once again recalled the unforgettable years in the past. She is still the same little overlord who is fearless. Seeing Ning Muyun staring at her, Yao Yunjing couldn't help feeling annoyed. Ning Muyun, what are you looking at? Aren't you injured? Where are you? Why can't I see you? Ning Muyun sighed helplessly, slowly raised his bandaged hands, glanced at Yao Yunjing, and said unhappily, You are blind. Can't you see my hands are all bandaged? How can I fight you? Yao Yunjing took a closer look and found that the bandages on Ning Muyun's hands were scarlet, and a strong smell of blood was emitting from time to time. What happened? How are you injured? Ning Muyun dropped his arms weakly and covered it up casually. It's a burn. It's nothing serious. Yao Yunjing looked at Ning Muyun suspiciously. Can burns make your hands smell bloody? Ning Muyun pretended not to hear and cleverly changed the subject. Yao Yunjing, why are you here? Faced with Ning Muyun's attempt to change the subject, Yao Yunjing snorted coldly, but did not continue to ask. I'm the boss here. Where would I be if I'm not here? Are you the boss here? Ning Muyun widened his eyes in surprise. Hello, director. Asterisk 2-inch. The 2 policemen beside him quickly saluted Yao Yunjing. Yao Yunjing nodded and gave a dangerous smile. Lao Zhang, Xiaoma, you finally brought him back to me. Old Zhang felt cold sweat on his back and quickly forced out a flattering smile. Director Yao, we brought them back, didn't we? Please let us go. Yes, yes. Another young policeman, Xiaoma, also said with a wry smile. Chief, we completed the task perfectly this time. I hope you will be magnanimous and not ask us to do those things again. Humph! Yao Yunjing glanced at the 2 of them and smiled, visibly happy. You 2 did a good job today. I'll let you off for now. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. Ning Muyun looked at Yao Yunjing's familiar operation, and his face was filled with dismay. After all these years, she still likes to play this game. It looks like these policemen are having a hard time. Yao Yunjing keenly caught the change in Ning Muyun's expression. Ning Muyun, why are you looking at me like that? Are you saying bad things about me in your heart? Oops. Ning Muyun secretly said, Oh no, this guy found out. The memory engraved in his bones made him subconsciously want to escape, but he was still one step too late. Yao Yunjing grabbed Ning Muyun's neck. Ning Muyun suddenly felt like he couldn't breathe. You let go of me. Huh, want to escape? Yao Yunjing held him close to her, and her calm tone made Ning Muyun feel cold to the core. Ning Muyun, what bad things did you say about me in your mind just now? Say it out loud, so I can hear it. I have nothing. Yao Yunjing was enjoying the long-lost fun. Suddenly, a clear scolding was heard. "Let go of my husband." Yao Yunjing slowly raised her head, and when she saw Shen Yunyan's angry face, that dangerous smile appeared on her face again. Interesting. Chapter 97, I'll let you see if I dare to do this. Husband? Yao Yunjing glanced at Ning Muyun, with an ambiguous look in her eyes. Very intriguing. Ning Muyun, are you married? Ahem. Ning Muyun took 2 quick breaths and glanced at Yao Yunjing unhappily. I guess so. We just got married 3 days ago, but we got divorced this morning. Yao Yunjing looked at Ning Muyun jokingly, leaned close to his ear, and whispered, Ning Muyun, didn't Jiang Yunfei always say she wanted to marry you when she was a child? Why didn't you marry her? Why did you marry this woman instead? Also, they just got married 3 days ago and got divorced this morning. What happened in such a short time? Tell me about it. When Jiang Yunfei was mentioned, Ning Muyun's face instantly turned gloomy. Yao Yunjing, don't mention her in front of me anymore. I don't want to hear that name. As for this woman, Ning Muyun's eyes were filled with disgust. This is the marriage arranged for me by my family. We are not suitable, so we are getting divorced. Oh. Yao Yunjing glanced at Ning Muyun meaningfully. It seems that you have experienced a lot in the past few years since we were apart. Ning Muyun's eyes darkened. It was not just a lot. He had died once. Seeing Ning Muyun's reaction, Yao Yunjing became more interested in Shen Yunyan. As someone who grew up with Ning Muyun in mutual friendly exchanges since childhood, Yao Yunjing was very familiar with Ning Muyun. What Ning Muyun values most is his family. When Ning Muyun was a child, no matter how much you criticized him, he would not get angry. At most, he would just have a few words with others. But if you insult his family, Ning Muyun will definitely become angry and even fight with others. Even if he can't beat the opponent, Ning Muyun will not give up. He will keep challenging the other party until the other party takes back what he said. Yao Yunjing has a deep understanding of this. After all, Ning Muyun's constant challenges were one of the rare pleasures for Yao Yunjing in the orphanage. Ning Muyun, who values his family so much, will absolutely obey unconditionally the marriage arranged for him by his family. Even if he himself was unhappy, he would never cancel the engagement. But such a Ning Muyun actually divorced this woman, and they got divorced within just 3 days of getting married. This is very intriguing. Yao Yunjing looked at Shen Yunyan with a wise gleam in his eyes. Based on Ning Muyun's personality, as long as the person he marries is not too extreme, he can maintain this marriage. Unless this woman did something unforgivable, plus today's call to the police. It seems that there is a problem in Ning Muyun's family as well. His family members must have done something unforgivable to Ning Muyun. Otherwise, Ning Muyun, who loves his family the most, would not have been forced to beat them up. Yao Yunjing glanced at Ning Muyun, whose face was gloomy, and sighed in her heart. I thought he would have a good life after being taken away by his family. But now it seems that he has not had a good life in recent years. Well, wiping away the chaotic thoughts in his mind, Yao Yunjing looked at Shen Yunyan again, and his eyes became sharp. As both are women, Yao Yunjing cannot hide Shen Yunyan's expression from her. This woman doesn't like Ning Muyun. In her eyes, Yao Yunjing could not find a trace of love for Ning Muyun. What exists is only an uncomfortable possessiveness. She is not a good woman. Worse than Jiang Yunfei. The joy of reuniting with Ning Muyun after a long separation was also greatly dissipated by Shen Yunyan. Yao Yunjing naturally developed a hostility towards Shen Yunyan. This woman wants to monopolize her own toy. Yao Yunjing leaned closer to Ning Muyun unnoticeably and gave Shen Yunyan a provocative smile. Shen Yunyan almost bit her teeth off when she saw this. Along the way, she was trying to think of ways to get Ning Muyun out of the police station safely and remarry her willingly. I racked my brains and came up with a few ideas and was about to try them out. As a result, as soon as I walked into the police station, I saw a beautiful woman with a slim figure having intimate contact with Ning Muyun. The two of them seemed very close. Shen Yunyan exploded immediately. A strong negative emotion suddenly emerged from the bottom of my heart. When Shen Yunyan saw the intimacy between the two, she felt like her heart was being bitten by countless ants. She couldn't accept Ning Muyun having such close contact with other women, especially such a beautiful lady in black stockings and long legs. That feeling is like your own treasure being played with by others at will. Shen Yunyan couldn't bear it. Shin Yunyan didn't know whether this was love or not. Shin Yunyan, who had never liked anyone, didn't know what it felt like to like someone. But she knew one thing very well. That means she must separate this woman from Ning Muyan. Shin Yunyan rushed to Yao Yunjing in high heels and said angrily, "Lady, please let my husband go." "Shut up, Shin Yunyan. We are divorced. I won't let you call me your husband again." Ning Muyun angrily rebuked Shin Yunyan in a decisive manner. Yao Yunjing looked at Ning Muyun in surprise, then turned her head and gave Shin Yunyan a meaningful smile. "You heard it? You." Shin Yunyan was so angry that her eyes turned red. She didn't expect Ning Muyun to scold her so angrily in front of outsiders. Although she felt aggrieved when she saw Yao Yunjing's provocative smile, Shin Yunyan's unyielding personality gave her courage. She pretended not to hear Ning Muyun's words and looked straight at Yao Yunjing. "Madam, it is inappropriate for you to do this in public." In public. Yao Yunjing looked around and found that the hall was unusually empty at noon. The police officers in the office had already gone off work and gone to lunch. There were only a few of us in the hall. The two policemen noticed Yao Yunjing's gaze and quickly turned away tactfully. They don't want to be bullied by Yao Yunjing. Yao Yunjing looked around, smiled softly at Shin Yunyan and asked, "There are only a few of us here. What's wrong with that?" Shin Yunyan stared at Yao Yunjing closely, with fire in her eyes. "Madam, even if Ning Muyun and I are divorced, we were once husband and wife. Don't you think it's inappropriate for you to lean so closely on someone else's ex-husband? Have you ever been married?" Yao Yunjing smiled and looked at Ning Muyun. "Ning Muyun, are you still related now? I have already obtained a divorce certificate from her. There is no relationship between us." Ning Muyun said with a cold face. "Did you hear that? Ning Muyun has nothing to do with you anymore. I can treat him however I want. Even if I kiss him, you can't do anything about it." Yao Yunjing's remarks with a cold smile made Shin Yunyan furious. "You dare? Huh?" Yao Yunjing sneered. "Today I'm going to let you see if I dare to do this." After Yao Yunjing finished speaking, she turned directly towards Ning Muyun. Ning Muyun panicked instantly. "Yao Yunjing, what are you doing?" Yao Yunjing's lips pressed heavily against Ning Muyun's lips. Their lips were directly intertwined. Chapter 98, The Legendary Committing Crime in Front of Wife. The air in the hall seemed to freeze in an instant. Everyone present was stunned, unable to believe what was happening before their eyes. When Lao Zhang and Xiao Ma heard the fierce confrontation between Shin Yunyan and Yao Yunjing, they were about to turn around to persuade them to stop fighting. But who would have thought that before opening his mouth, he would see such an explosive scene? Their ruthless director actually kissed a man. The sun is really rising in the west. Ning Muyun couldn't believe what was happening before his eyes. But the soft tongue with the scent of flowers in the mouth proves that all this is true. Ning Muyun couldn't understand what Yao Yunjing was thinking. But it is worth mentioning that Yao Yunjing's tongue is much softer than her fist. Zhao Zheng didn't expect to see such an absurd scene as soon as he came in. "What on earth just happened? I was just stuck in traffic. How could I have missed so many things? Aren't you under investigation? How come you accepted the investigation and even kissed each other?" Zhao Zheng was a man who had seen many storms, so he quickly regained his composure. But when he saw Yao Yunjing's true face, Zhao Zheng was shocked again. Isn't this the legendary female director? He had also heard about Yao Yunjing's deeds. When he was still in the police academy, he made a great contribution because of an incident, able to join the police team in advance. After becoming a policeman, he solved many vicious cases and continued to make contributions. Later, he was promoted to the position of police chief by his superiors. He is only 24 years old and is a rising star in the police force, a legend in the police world. Zhao Zheng admires this legendary female director very much. I've also heard that many young men in Shanghai wanted to win the hearts of beautiful women, but unfortunately, all they got in the end was a vicious kick. Notorious. But what Zhao Zheng never dreamed of was that this female director was actually an acquaintance of the young master. Looks pretty intimate. After Ning Muyun and Shun Yunyan divorced, Zhao Zheng also considered how to handle Ning Muyun's marriage. Originally, he had already prepared to contact a blind date for Ning Muyun, but he was busy dealing with fun matters in the past 2 days and did not have time to contact. Now it seems that he no longer has to worry about Ning Muyun. This legendary female director not only has a bright future, but also has excellent looks. Even in the upper-class circles of the entire Magic City, He is an extraordinary existence. The most important thing is that this female director also likes Xiaoyan. Zhao Jing couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. I thought to myself, Uncle Ning, don't worry, Xiaoyan will be fine. I will always take care of him. Compared to Zhao Jing's relief, Xin Yunyan is now furious. She never thought that she would encounter this legendary wife rape. The moment Yao Yunjing kissed Ning Muyun, Xin Yunyan felt as if her heart was torn apart with pain. It feels like my treasure has been stolen by someone else. The tearing pain made Xin Yunyan furious. Let her do everything she can to get Ning Muyun back from this woman. Let go of my husband. Although Yao Yunjing was playing with Ning Muyun's tongue, her eyes were always observing Xin Yunyan. When she saw Xin Yunyan rushing towards her, Yao Yunjing turned sideways and easily avoided Xin Yunyan's pounce. Xin Yunyan was caught off guard and fell heavily to the ground. The pain in the body is far less than the pain in the heart. Ning Muyun's cheeks were bulging and sunken, and the two looked like they were flirting in public, which made Xin Yunyan feel as if her heart was being pricked by needles. She watched the conversation between the two and shed 2 lines of sad tears and grievance. Ning Muyun, you've gone too far. Ning Muyun didn't have time to pay attention to Xin Yunyan. He finally broke free from Yao Yunjing's tongue and pushed her away. When he came into contact with fresh air again, he felt his tongue numb and he took deep breaths. Yao Yunjing found it very funny to look at the embarrassed Ning Muyun. Ning Muyun, you are getting weaker and weaker. Ning Muyun glared at Yao Yunjing and asked angrily, Yao Yunjing, what did you do just now? Yao Yunjing pointed at Xin Yunyan nonchalantly and said with a sly smile, your ex-wife doesn't believe that I dare to kiss you, so I'll show her my courage. Ning Muyun glared at Yao Yunjing unhappily. You showed her your courage. Why are you sticking your tongue into my mouth? Huh? Yao Yunjing smiled. Let me taste you to see if you taste the same as when you were a kid? Nonsense. When did you ever kiss me as a child? Have you forgotten? Yao Yunjing smiled playfully. One time I knocked you out and you were lying on the ground. I was curious and secretly kissed you. What? Ning Muyun couldn't believe his ears. He stared at Yao Yunjing blankly, constantly questioning his life. What else have you done to me? Yao Yunjing raised his head proudly and said in a confused tone, who knows? I have forgotten many things I did before. You. Ning Muyun was almost mad at her. Yao Yunjing, you're going too far. Ning Muyun, don't say anything. Yao Yunjing rudely interrupted Ning Muyun's accusation. The taste in your mouth is still exactly the same as when you were a child. There is no taste of anyone else at all. You're not still having your first kiss, are you? Ning Muyun glared, but didn't know what to say. He had never kissed a girl before. Huh. As soon as I saw you like that, I guessed it. But this is fun. Yao Yunjing said as he slowly lowered his body, looked at Xin Yunyan, who looked angry, and asked coldly, didn't you marry him 3 days ago? How come it's your first kiss? Didn't you kiss him at the wedding? When Xin Yunyan heard this, a trace of guilt flashed in her eyes. How should she answer this? Ning Muyun's face darkened again. Yao Yunjing, she ran away from the wedding. Oh, ran away from marriage. Yao Yunjing looked at Xin Yunyan with interest and asked with a smile, Miss, you don't want me to touch your husband, right? Why are you willing to run away from the wedding? Xin Yunyan was choked for a moment. She now deeply regretted what she had done at the wedding. She shouldn't have left Ning Muyun behind to see Wu Minghui off. Thinking about what happened in the past 2 days, endless regret filled Xin Yunyan's heart. If Ning Muyun hadn't been angry because of running away from marriage, I'm afraid nothing that happened in the past few days would have happened. Now his face was disfigured. Ning Muyun divorced him, and the Ning family was beaten up by him. The Xin group is now facing many crises. What made Xin Yunyan regret the most was that the Ning Muyun, who used to obey her in everything, had completely disappeared. Ning Muyun is now so cold and stern that Xin Yunyan is frightened. For the first time in her life, she felt resentful towards Wu Minghui. Why not go abroad earlier or later, but on your wedding day? Although she felt extremely regretful, Xin Yunyan knew it was already too late. The key now is to make Ning Muyun change his mind. Let him remarry me. More importantly, Ning Muyun must not be put in jail. After making up her mind, Xin Yunyan cheered up again. She stared at Yao Yunjing and said, that's between me and my husband. It has nothing to do with you. No problem. Yao Yunjing's face also darkened. Ning Muyun, the wife your family found for you is such a bad woman. That's right. Ning Muyun looked at Xin Yunyan coldly. She's indeed a bad woman. Ning Muyun, you. Shen Yunyan didn't expect Ning Muyan to evaluate her like this in front of outsiders. She was feeling aggrieved and was about to say something when Ning Tsangmu with a gloomy face and Shin Wenshan with an anxious look rushed in. Before the two men stood still, Shin Wenshan said hurriedly, "Comrade police, my son-in-law really didn't do anything. You can't wrongly accuse a good man." Yao Yunjing looked at the two people who had just walked in. After thinking for a while, he asked in a cold voice, "Which of you called the police just now?" Shin Wenshan was stunned for a moment, then quickly said with a wry smile, "Comrade police officer, it's all my good-for-nothing son. He was the one making it up, making nonsense. And your son, still in the hospital." Yao Yunjing showed a playful smile. "Lao Zhang, Xiao Ma, exist. You two, go to the hospital and bring the person who reported the case back to me. Yes. Everyone else, follow me to the conference room. I want to see what this case is all about today." Chapter 99 Shinshwani. "Dad, save me." Meeting room. The atmosphere was stagnant. Yao Yunjing sat in the main seat in the conference room, looking at the two clearly divided parties in front of him. Ning Miyun and Zhao Zheng sat on Yao Yunjing's right. Both of them looked calm. Ning Tsangmu, Shin Wenshan, and Shin Yunyan sat on Yao Yunjing's left. The three of them were either angry, nervous, or resentful. But one thing is very similar. They were all staring at Ning Miyun. Yao Yunjing watched all this with great interest, a cunning light flashing in his eyes. "Lawyer Zhao, we meet again." Zhao Zheng nodded. "Director Yao, how are you these days?" "My life is much better without you, Lawyer Zhao, causing trouble." Ning Miyun was quite surprised by Yao Yunjing's weird look. "Uncle Zhao, do you know her?" Zhao Zheng smiled helplessly. "Some friends asked me to defend them through others. I ran into your good friend several times and had some unpleasant experiences." Unpleasant. Ning Miyun was stunned for a moment. The unhappiness Uncle Zhao mentioned might not be that simple, right? Bang! "Come in." The door slowly opened, and Lao Zhang and Xiao Ma led Shinshwani and his mother into the conference room. "Chief, the reporter is here." Yao Yunjing's eagle-like sharp eyes made Shinshwani break out in a cold sweat. "Isn't the person who reported the case a man? Why is there a woman?" Lao Zhang explained helplessly. "Chief, the mother of the reporter was worried that her son would be hurt, so she insisted on coming to the police station together." Yao Yunjing glanced at Bai Yin and immediately made a judgment from her evasive eyes and cold, thin lips. This is a sarcastic and stupid woman, but she looks a bit like Ning Muyun's ex-wife, so she is probably her mother. After making the judgment, Yao Yunjing felt more sympathy for Ning Muyun. Having a mother-in-law like this is such a pain, but fortunately, Ning Muyun has divorced that bad woman. Yao Yunjing cleared his mind, and his expression became serious. The powerful aura emanating from his body frightened Shinshwani so much that he couldn't stop shaking. "You are the reporter." "No, I'm not. Shin Wenshan was almost mad. This piece of trash really brought shame to the Shun family. Under Shin Wenshan's angry gaze, Shinshwani finally uttered a complete sentence. "I am the person who reported the case." Wei snack. Yao Yunjing made an evaluation of Shinshwani in his heart. "Reporter, what is your relationship with Ning Muyun?" Shinshwani was stunned for a moment and scratched his head. "I should be considered his brother-in-law." "No," Ning Muyun said with a cold face. "I have divorced her sister, and he is no longer my brother-in-law." Ning Muyun. Shin Yunyan felt very aggrieved. But under Shin Wenshan's angry glare, she could only shut up. Only those eyes were still staring at Ning Muyun with resentment. Yao Yunjing glanced at Shin Yunyan and continued to look at Shinshwani, who was looking indignant. "Reporter, you just called the police and said that Ning Muyun beat someone to death. Is that true?" Shin Xian was just feeling indignant at Ning Muyun's answer. But when Yao Yunjing suddenly asked him this question, he immediately panicked. Shin Wenshan has been hinting at Shinshwani with his eyes, telling him not to talk nonsense. Shinshwani had never dealt with this kind of thing before, and was thinking hard with his rusty brain. Bai Yin suddenly jumped out. "Police comrade, is there any need to say more?" Bai Yin couldn't bear to see her son in danger, so she volunteered to rush forward, pointing at Ning Muyun angrily and saying, "Not only did this little bastard beat someone up, he almost beat him to death. Look, he even slapped me." "Bai Yin, shut up." Shin Wenshan is going crazy. It's rare that Shinshwani used his brain today. As a result, Bai Yin popped out again. Bai Yin was also frightened by Shun Wenshan's eyes, but in her heart, nothing was more important than her son. Besides, Bai Yin is still feeling resentful about the slap Ning Muyin gave her today. Now that we have such a good opportunity, how can we not take revenge? What did I say wrong? He just slapped me. Shin Wenshan wished he could strangle Bai Yin to death. Shin Yin also glanced at her mother helplessly and mouthed to Bai Yin silently. Property. Yao Yunjing keenly captured Shin Yin's words through lip reading. Property? What property? Bai Yin finally reacted and quickly said to Yao Yunjing. Comrade police, everything I just said is false. He didn't hit me. Fake. Yao Yunjing's aura burst out again. Madam, you should know that perjury is against the law. Ah! Bai Yin was shocked by Yao Yunjing's harsh words. She said with an evasive look, but I really remembered it wrong just now. You can't accuse me of breaking the law just because I remembered it wrong, right? Yao Yin stared at Bai Yin quietly until she felt weak and broke out in cold sweat. Madam, what is your relationship with Ning Muyin? I'm his mother-in-law. Oh, I see. Yao Yunjing slowly looked toward Shun Yunyan. His eyes were clearly calm, but Shin Yunyan felt they were full of pity, which made her furious. The reporter exists. Shin Xuani was so frightened that he stood up straight, his posture more upright than that of an elementary school student. Is what you said in the police report true? Did Ning Muyin beat anyone? Shin Xuani has learned his lesson now. No, Ning Muyin didn't hit anyone. Really? Yao Yunjing stared at Shin Xuani with a serious look. Shin Xuani felt a chill on his back, but under Shun Wenshan's murderous gaze, he still stammered. Really? Ning Muyin really didn't hit anyone. Can you promise? Yao Yunjing narrowed her eyes slightly. Ning Muyin frowned slightly. Yao Yunjing's expression meant that she was going to play a trick on someone again. What is she going to do? Shun Xuani, who had answered once, answered again quickly. I can guarantee it. The familiar answer made Shin Xuani feel proud. Who said I'm trash? See how smart I am today? Just when Shin Xuani was reveling in himself, Ning Sangmu, Shin Wenshan, and Shun Yunyan all breathed a sigh of relief. This should be the end now. The next step is to find a way to get Ning Muyin and Shin Yunyan to remarry. Good. Yao Yunjing gave an ambiguous smile. Since you can guarantee that what you said is true, then let's go now. Walk. Shun Xuani was stunned for a moment. Where are we going? Yao Yunjing smiled playfully. We were at the hospital, so I had to see if what you said was true. Ah. Yao Yunjing ignored Shun Xuani's panic and continued talking with a smile. Reporter, you should know that making a false report to the police is illegal, just like giving false testimony. If I went to the hospital and didn't see anyone injured, then you would be making a false alarm. But if I go to the hospital and find that someone was beaten by Ning Muyin, you will be giving false testimony. You should know that making a false report to the police and giving false testimony will both lead to detention. Aye. Shin Xuani was completely panicked. I didn't call the police falsely. Then you just gave false testimony. Aye. Shin Xuani couldn't hold it anymore. Dad, save me. Shin Wenshan was also dumbfounded. Comrade police, we. Yao Yunjing didn't give them a chance, stood up, and walked out. Okay, we'll understand everything when we get to the hospital. Everyone, let's go. Ning Sangmu and the other two watched Yao Yunjing walk out swiftly. The three of them secretly thought that something was wrong. This is bad. Chapter 100 Ning Luoling. Did you really lose your brother? First People's Hospital. The hospital's senior management is in the VLP ward where the Ning family is located. The $100 bills scattered on the ground had been collected by the guards and put into the suitcase brought by Ning Muyin. The bloodstains, vomit, and ink marks on the ground were also cleaned up. The entire ward was basically restored to its original state, with only a spiderweb-like ink mark left on the white wall, which was extremely hideous and glaring. There were a few more beds in the spacious ward. Ning Sijia, Ning Yuyin, and Ning Yanjun were all lying on the hospital beds in a coma. Ning Sijia's cheek had been treated by the nurses. She had been remedicated and bandaged, and was also receiving N4 to alleviate her injuries. He was lying on the bed, dying, looking extremely miserable. There is no sign of her usual high-spirited and energetic appearance in the company. Ning Yun lay on the bed with a pale face, her brows still furrowed from time to time. She was in a coma, as if she had been in a nightmare, and her face looked grim. Ning Yanjun was lying on the bed on the other side. She had just suffered an attack of spinal disease and fainted from the pain. Ning Shirwei had already given her 2 shots of sedatives. But Ning Yanjun couldn't help groaning in her coma, as if she was suffering from great pain. Oh, right. Ning Shirwei has woken up. She was just rubbed on the ground by Ning Muyun with her face, so her injuries were not too serious. Although she felt sore all over, she woke up soon after when Mei Yuanyuan called her. But the burning pain on her face and the disgust in her heart almost drove her crazy. Sitting in front of the hospital bed, Ning Shirwei seemed to be able to feel her cheeks wiping the floor. The thought of all that filthy stuff on the floor. Then I thought about the dirt on Ning Muyun's soles after he went to the toilet. She was such a severe misophobia that she wanted to kill Ning Muyun. She now looked a little unwell. Her eyes were red, and she kept rubbing her hands as if she was wiping away something dirty. Ning Shuxian was also silently wiping away tears. Today's great humiliation made her feel indignant. The violence that bipolar disorder would cause in her heart from time to time made her eyes change constantly. Her trembling hands also revealed her inner unrest. Ning Luoling and Ning Ranran huddled together, not daring to say a word. The shadow that Ning Muyin had cast on them just now was too deep for the 2 of them to get out of it for a while. Mei Yuanyuan sat in front of the hospital bed, wiping away tears as she looked at her 3 unconscious daughters. His eyes were full of guilt. The atmosphere in the ward was extremely depressing. Ding-a-ling-a-ling. The sudden ringing of the phone broke the depressing atmosphere in the ward. Everyone present perked up. Ning Shirwei, who had keen hearing, immediately discovered the source of the ringing sound. It's Ning Yin's cell phone. She quickly took it in her hands and received it. Hello. How are you? Ning Yuan, what happened to you? I asked you to send the 2 certificates to the company immediately. Why haven't you done anything yet? Ning Shirwei was stunned for a moment. Hello. Who are you? Feng Yin on the other end of the phone was also stunned for a moment. I am Feng Yin, the public relations director of Royun Culture. Where is Ning Yuan? Where is she? Mei Yuan looked over worriedly. Shirwei, what's wrong? Ning Shirwei held the phone and said, Mom, it's the public relations director of my 3rd sister's company. Then go ask them if there is anything wrong. Ning Shirwei nodded and moved closer to the microphone again. Hello, Director Phone, my 3rd sister suddenly fainted and she can't go to the company now. How so? Feng Yan's anxious voice came from the phone. Our department is trying to calm down public opinion for her. Now we just need her 2 certificates. Now tell me she has fainted. What do you want us to do? Prove. Ning Shirwei suddenly remembered the test report that Ning Yuyin asked her to prepare for her. That was Ning Muyun's STD test report. Ning Shirwei, who was thinking about how to take revenge on Ning Muyun, suddenly had an idea. Yes. Isn't this a good way to take revenge on Ning Muyun? Director Fong, I know where the 2 certificates issued by my 3rd sister are. I'll have someone send them to you now. Is that okay with you? There was silence on the other end of the phone for a while, and then he said, then have someone send the things over now. We can calm down public opinion for her first. Okay, I'll send someone over right away. Ning Shirwei hung up the phone and took out 2 certificates that had just been issued from Ning Yuyin's handbag. He ran out of the ward directly, leaving Mei Yuanyuan and others confused. After Ning Shirwei went downstairs, she found her driver, handed the evidence to him, and asked him to deliver it to Royun Culture. The driver drove away immediately. Ning Shirwei looked at the car in the distance with a resentful smile on her face. Ning Muyun, we are not done yet. I will return all the humiliation you have brought upon me to you. Ning Shirwei sneered and turned back to the ward. Mei Yuanyuan saw Ning Shirwei suddenly run out and hurriedly stepped forward and asked, Shirwei, what happened just now? Nothing. Ning Shirwei covered up the past with vague words. My 3rd sister's company needed something, so I asked the driver to deliver it. Oh, I'm glad it didn't delay anything. Mei Yuanyuan breathed a sigh of relief. Your 3rd sister has become like this now. I don't know if it will affect her work. Ning Shirwei's face darkened, and she once again thought of what Ning Muyun had done, feeling resentful. Mom, Ning Muyun went too far today. I'm afraid. Hearing Ning Muyun, Mei Yuanyuan's expression changed again. She suddenly turned her head to look at Ning Luoling. Her eyes turned red. Ning Luoling, tell me the truth. Did you really lose your brother? Chapter 101 Ning Luoling. I will investigate everything that happened back then. Ning Luoling's body shook violently. Mei Yuanyuan's sudden question made Ning Luoling panic again. She has suffered too many blows today. Ning Muyun's forced questioning before had already made her feel very guilty. Now Mei Yuan's harsh questioning made her extremely panicked. The panic in her heart made her want to confess everything. But when Ning Luoling thought about the consequences of confessing, a greater sense of panic arose in her heart. Mei Yuan had been very strict with them since they were young. If Mei Yuan knew what she had done, Ning Luoling couldn't imagine what terrible consequences would happen to her. The fear in her heart made her decide to cover it up again. Anyway, the past cannot be undone. I have already done something wrong to Ning Muyun. Why not do it again? After making up her mind, Ning Luoling suppressed the panic in her heart, looked straight at Mei Yuan and answered, Mom, why? What are you talking about? How could I possibly do those things? But you just said it yourself that you threw away your brother with your own hands. Mei Yuan was not fooled by Ning Luoling, and still questioned her sternly with red eyes. The three sisters Ning Shuxian, Ning Shirwei, and Ning Ranran looked at Ning Luoling at the same time, their eyes full of confusion. What happened back then was indeed very strange. That amusement park is not close to home. How did Ning Luoling take a child who was 2 years younger than her to the amusement park? Ning Jibwa, who had been hiding aside like an invisible man, also poked his head out from under the quilt. He was also very curious about how Ning Luoling would answer. Feeling everyone's gaze, Ning Luoling felt the pressure doubled. But when she thought of the consequences of being exposed, she gave up the idea of confessing again. Mom, you saw it this morning too? Ning Luoling cried very aggrievedly. Ning Muyin grabbed me and interrogated me. Woo, if I didn't tell him, he would beat me. Woo. I was forced into a corner by him. Well, that's why I said that. Woo. When the Ning Shuxian and other sisters heard this, they immediately put aside their suspicion of Ning Luoling, compared to Ning Muyun, whom they hated so much. It is obvious that sisters who have been together for many years are more worthy of their trust. Ning Shuxian immediately stood on Ning Luoling's side. Mom, sixth sister is right. Ning Muyun, that little bastard. Shut up. Mei Yuan's angry shout startled everyone. Everyone looked at Mei Yuan's red eyes and felt a little fear in their hearts. Don't ever call me son like that again. He's your real brother, not some little bastard. If I hear you say something like that again, don't blame me for being ruthless. Mei Yuan's firm attitude made several people very puzzled. Mom, why? Ning Shuxian was indignant. He beat us sisters like this. Why are you still protecting him? Yes, Mom. Ning Shirwei also looked very puzzled. He has done such a thing today. Can't we scold him a few words? Ning Ranran was also angry. Mom, he beat Brother Jibo so badly. Why can't we scold him? Ning Jibo glanced at Ning Ranran and cursed her in his heart. What an idiot. Even if he hadn't been mentioned, Ning Muyun would have been scolded by them left and right. Mei Yuan might be persuaded and return to her original attitude. Now that he is mentioned, isn't this forcing him to defend Ning Muyun? If he doesn't defend himself, won't his character be ruined? Even though he wanted to tear Ning Muyun to pieces alive. Ning Jibo still had to pretend to be concerned and said, second sister, fifth sister, little sister, you can't say that. Brother Muyun may be in a bad mood these days. As a family, we should be considerate of him. Mei Yuan was very moved when she heard Ning Jibo say this. Just as she was about to praise him, she suddenly remembered what Ning Muyun had said. Self-blame filled her heart again, making it impossible for her to treat Ning Jibo the same way as before. After Ning Jibo finished speaking, he was waiting for Mei Yuan to praise him, but he didn't hear anything after waiting for a long time. He only saw Mei Yuan's eyes full of self-blame. I couldn't help but feel even more jealous of Ning Muyun. The three Ning Shuxian sisters glanced at Ning Jibwa and sighed helplessly. This brother is good in everything except this one thing. It's too easy to be soft-hearted. Mei Yuan took a deep breath and stared at her three daughters in front of her. I don't care what you think, but you are not allowed to say that about my son in the future. Otherwise, I won't let you off easily. Seeing Mei Yuan close to collapse, the three sisters reluctantly accepted the fact. Mei Yuan exhaled heavily, stared at Ning Shuxian and said, Shuxian, keep talking. Ning Shuxian glanced at Ning Luoling and decided to stand on Ning Luoling's side. Mom, sixth sister is right. That little Ning Muyun forced sixth sister to say that this morning, sixth sister was forced into it. Ning Shirwei also stood firmly on Ning Luoling's side. Mom, that little Ning Muyun's actions towards sixth sister were simply forced confession. Everyone says that confessions are obtained through torture, but these forced confessions don't count. Yeah, Mom! Ning Ranran also bravely protected Ning Luoling behind her. What did Ning Muyin do to Six Sister just now? Six Sister was forced into a corner by him, so she said those lies. Seeing the three sisters defending her, Ning Luoling's panic finally dissipated a lot. She quickly covered herself up. Mom, I was really forced to do this just now. I was forced by Ning Mian. Mei Yuanyuan stared at Ning Luoling closely, her eyes as cold as ice. Ning Luoling, I can't confirm whether you are lying or not, but I will start investigating everything that happened back then. If I knew you lied to me today, I would never forgive you. Remember what I said today? Ning Luoling suddenly felt as if someone was squeezing her heart, and she couldn't breathe at all. She took a few deep breaths and replied in a panic. Mom, I didn't lie. I definitely didn't lie. That's good. It's great that you didn't lie. After Mei Yuanyuan finished speaking, she remembered the severance agreement she had signed, and her heart was filled with guilt again. My poor child. Ning Luoling finally breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that Mei Yuanyuan stopped asking questions. She secretly made up her mind that she must not let what happened that year be exposed. Ning Shuxian and her two sisters felt bad when they saw Mei Yuanyuan became depressed again. The atmosphere in the ward fell into depression again. Bang! The sudden knock on the door interrupted Mei Yuanyuan's mood. Come in. Yao Yunjing pushed the door open and walked in. Mei Yuanyuan and her daughter were stunned when they saw the beautiful woman suddenly approaching. Hello. Who are you looking for? Yao Yunjing glanced at everyone briefly. Yao Yunjing was quite surprised by the injuries on Mei Yuanyuan and others. It seems that Ning Muyin is really angry this time. That's strange. What unforgivable things did they do to make Ning Muyin, who cherished his family the most, treat them so cruelly? Although he was confused, Yao Yunjing's face remained very calm. Even Komin. The people outside the door entered the spacious VLP ward again. Child! When Mei Yuanyuan saw Ning Muyin appear again, her eyes were filled with joy. You're back! She took 3 or 2 steps to Ning Muyin, wanted to check if Ning Muyin was being harassed by the police. But Ning Muyin avoided Mei Yuanyuan's greetings with a calm expression. Mei Yuanyuan, we have severed our relationship. Please don't bother me anymore. The happy expression disappeared in an instant. Mei Yuanyuan suddenly felt a heart-wrenching pain. Chapter 102 Ning Sangmu. Dad will do it himself. Mei Yuanyuan pleaded with tears in her eyes. My child, I just pressed the fingerprint on impulse. I don't really want to break up with you. Please forgive me, okay? Yao Yunjing watched coldly, but her heart was full of curiosity. She glanced at Mei Yuanyuan. Is this Ning Muyun's mother? Ning Muyun is handsome. She admits that. Over the years, she has seen many men, but few can compare with Ning Muyun. It is precisely because of his charm that Yao Yunjing deliberately angered Xin Yunyan with a kiss. She has her own plan in mind. Although Mei Yuanyuan is middle-aged, she still retains some of her former charm, but the bright red palm print on her face destroys this beauty. Yao Yunjing secretly speculated that the slap must have been given by Ning Muyun. Ning Muyun's face was as gloomy as ice, and he suddenly said coldly, Mei Yuan, I warned you not to say you are my mother again, right? Mei Yuanyuan stepped back in fear, crying softly. Child, I was wrong. Ning Muyun, you've gone too far. Ning Shuxian rushed forward angrily, protecting Mei Yuanyuan behind her. Ning Shirwei also stepped forward and shouted, Don't think we won't punish you just because Mom is here. The scene was tense for a while. Ning Ranran cheered from behind, but didn't dare to step forward. Only Ning Luoling stood aside, silently bowing her head. Yao Yunjing found the family's farce interesting, but she still interrupted. Enough! You can deal with your family affairs later, and now you have to deal with the official business at hand. She turned and looked at the reporter Shen Shuani. You just said in the police call that Ning Muyin beat someone to death. Is it true? Shen Shuani's calves were trembling, and he stammered. No, he didn't kill anyone. Yao Yunjing frowned. Did he hit anyone? Shen Shuani was in a dilemma, secretly praying that he could escape this disaster. He looked at his father Shun Wenshan, and his eyes for help were met with a cold response. In desperation, he whispered, Officer, Ning Muyin didn't hit anyone. However, Ning Shuxian was not relenting and was ready to continue accusing. Who said that? Ning Muyin. Suddenly, a loud shout interrupted her. Shut up. Ning Sangmu's face turned pale, and he slapped his daughter. I said shut up, didn't you hear me? Yao Yunjing's eyes flickered, and she found this scene more and more interesting. Although Ning Sangmu acted coldly towards Ning Muyun, he seemed to have been covering up for him. There must be some unknown secrets behind it. At this time, Ning Sangmu pulled his family aside and said in a deep voice, "Shu Xian, you have to understand that the most important thing for us now is the property. Although Ning Muyun has given up the right to inherit the Ning family's property, we can get the money back from Zhaojing through him." Ning Shuxian was still dissatisfied. "But he has already given up his inheritance rights. Why should he give it to us?" Ning Sangmu sighed. "You don't understand Zhao Zheng's methods. He is a top lawyer. It is impossible to take back the property through legal means. The only way is through Ning Muyun." Ning Shirwei was still furious. "Dad, are we just going to let Ning Muyun humiliate us like this?" Ning Sangmu's eyes were cold. "Of course not. Now we have to get the property first, and when the time is right, we can deal with him completely," he said coldly. Since Ran released that video, the company's market value has evaporated by 2.3 billion. Ning's group is now at a critical moment. You must understand that property is the top priority. Ning Shuxian and her sister looked at each other, feeling unwilling. Ning Sangmu saw this and promised in a deep voice, "After we take back the property, I will personally take action and will never let him get away with it." The greed and betrayal hidden behind the Ning family's turmoil gradually surfaced, and Yao Yunjing's interest grew stronger. She knew that all this was far from over.